welcome to episode 9 of the RF Generation PlayCast for December 2014. This is Grey Ghost 81. We have a very special show for you this time. No special guests, just all 4 of your hosts, Single Banana, Tech Wizard, Fleech, and myself, together once again to discuss the shoot-em-ups of the combined modern and retro shmup competition for December. But that's only the beginning. In our second segment, we'll take a look back at the year that was 2014 and count down each of our top 5 games from the community playthroughs. My spoiler warning is minimal this time, so go ahead and listen with reckless abandon even if you haven't played the games. Lastly, we have some important news about the playthrough committee, as on this episode we say farewell to a member of our crew. Who will it be? Stay tuned to find out. As always, you can listen to the show on Podomatic, iTunes, and YouTube, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Come on over to rfgeneration.com to join our playthroughs and discuss all the wonderful games we play. Seriously, as you hear this, we're off playing some awesome games together and discussing them on the forum at RF Generation. Join us, won't you? Thank you as always for listening, and now, on with the PlayCast.
Alright, so this month we've got a special show for you for our December playthrough. As most of you know who are on the site, we decided to do a little repeat of our Streets of Rage competition from last December, and we decided to do some shooters, as was the site's request. For some of the shooters, we voted on them, and others, the modern side, we had a lot of suggestions, and people just sort of picked some of our games. Joining me this month, I've got Grey Ghost 81, Sean.
What's up, everybody?
All right. I've got Fleech, Floyd.
How are you, gentlemen?
All right. And I've got Jamie, or Tech Wizard, as most of you know him on the site.
Hey, everyone. How you doing?
All right. So, just to kind of talk a little bit, we'll maybe start with some of our modern shoot-em-ups. During week 1, we played Gradius. And just want to get some thoughts on how you guys felt about this game.
It's hard.
Hard.
Really hard.
To sum it up in one word.
Yeah. Well, that sums up a lot of these games,
Nintendo
actually.
hard.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I agree. The game is super difficult. But I remember as being a kid just being so frustrated with this game. But ironically, this time playing it, it was one of those games I would play and I'd have a decent run and I'd be, okay, one more time. You know, I would just keep coming back to it. And I don't know, was anyone else, did anyone else have that sort of feeling this time playing it?
For sure.
No. Okay, go ahead.
Even though a lot of these games are really tough, like they're fun and you just want to go back to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of replay value, and it has an addictive just one more time element to it.
All right, I think we're going to get a dissenting opinion from Sean here.
Always
Well,
a contrarian.
I actually am going to... I found that playing any or all of these games for a high score was not within my comfort zone, and that's why I kind of gave up on Gradius really quickly. And I remember this game from my childhood, and I have a nostalgia for it, but I had such a hard time with it and like thinking too much about getting a high score that I kind of backed off it. But I just think it's, like I said, it's Nintendo hard, and it's crazy. There's so much stuff going on the screen. But my main point is, like, these games, like some of these games, but Gradius especially, it's like you become this perfectionist that you don't want to be, or at least I didn't. Like, okay, I got to hit the first 5 guys and then speed up. Then I go down, hit the next 5 guys, get the next power up. Okay, missiles. Okay, like it's like, and then if you mess up, like even people were mentioning on the forum thread,
Right.
Like if I didn't do it right, I just reset the game. Like if I died in the first level, I reset the game, and it's like that's not fun to me. Like if I was a kid playing this game over the summer, but I had to freaking play all 8 of these games or however many we're playing, and it's like I got things to do. And I actually wanted to play. I wanted to play the other games in the Konami Gradius kind of series. So I played Gradius 2, I played Life Force, I played Salamander, and they are different. I played Parodius. I played a bunch of stuff just to kind of get the feel. And Gradius was by far the hardest, and like, I don't want to say primitive, but like, just you could tell they were getting their legs beneath them making that. It's still great. It's a great game, but
Sure.
that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, all good points. And to kind of reiterate, one of the things you were talking about is because I think I was the one that probably brought that up about, is anyone else doing this? Is everyone else like kind of resetting? Like, at the beginning, like when you die, you reset. Yeah, I mean, I do that. It's one of those things where with this game, the thing you have to do, you have to get the power ups. You have to get your ship powered up. You have to stay powered up, and that's the difficulty in it, because once you die and you lose those power ups, you get put in a situation where it's very difficult to advance, and it's very difficult to power up again. So for me, being on that first stage, if I didn't have a good run in the first stage, I just hit reset, and to me that was okay because I'm only on the first stage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I did the same thing, and it got to the point where it was happening so frequently that I got a little annoyed with having to constantly get up off the couch and hit the reset button, because my NES isn't really right in front of me. It's a little bit farther away. So I got this like massive stick, and I was smacking the reset button every time I died. And that actually worked pretty good. It was a lot easier than getting up and tripping over the cords of the controller to get to the system.
Behold,
Especially when I'm
reset
getting really
stick.
pissed off. Yeah.
Reminded me of that episode where Cartman gets so huge, like the beefcake
Yeah.
episode.
Oh,
I can
yeah.
just see you sitting on the couch with a stick. You need a reset button.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. I actually played Gradius and Lightning Force emulated on my Dreamcast, so I was able to do there's like a keystroke that you can do to just go back to the
that
main
would've been
menu
nice.
or reset or
that's a
whatever,
great
so I
idea.
didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But I had the drawback of playing these games with the wrong controller, and I would argue one of the least ideal controllers for this kind of thing, but
Yeah.
but it was fine. Hey, Rich, I wanted to ask you, not to totally derail this conversation right away, but I noticed when I played Life Force and then Salamander that in Life Force, they don't show you what your power-ups are at the bottom of the screen the way they do in Gradius and in Salamander, but it's just like Life Force and Salamander are the same game, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you know why? I know you own a copy of Salamander. It didn't make sense to me. Like, they did it in the American version of Gradius,
Right.
and in Salamander, same exact menu system at the bottom, but in Life Force they only give you just one little rectangle at the bottom that has your power-ups in it. And if somebody was playing for the first time and didn't understand the upgrade system, it would be, I think, like, you would be kind of confused, and I don't know why they did that.
Now,
It's
did you
weird.
play these from cart, or did you emulate these? For clarification.
I emulated Salamander, but I also emulated Life Force, but I'm pretty sure I remember it being that way too. So,
Okay.
but I could be wrong.
I haven't played either game in so long, to be honest with you. I've not played Salamander yet, and
okay.
I have it, but as everyone knows that owns a copy of Salamander, a lot of the reason you own Salamander is because it's the coolest looking cart on the Famicom.
Right.
It's that clear
agreed.
blue, and that's one of the reasons I got it. So I have not plugged that game in yet, but I mean I do have it. So I'm gonna have to defer to probably one of our listeners, or put some show notes in later to.
If anybody knows, post it in the forum.
Absolutely.
I'm curious.
Absolutely, but great question, and that's a cool thing too about playing Gradius, is that it made you go out and want to play some of these other games, some of the other things in the series as well. And so that that says a lot about the game, and it's an old game. It feels like an older game when you're playing it. It is hard, as most the early Nintendo games were, but I think and we'll kind of move on to our next game, R-Type Final. R-Type Final and other games borrow a lot from the Gradius, the original Gradius, And I think that's what makes it such an important game. And I I don't know. I really liked having a classic like Gradius win the voting. I was really happy to see it. I don't think I voted for it. I voted for Dragon Force, Dragon Spirit, which is my favorite shooter on the original Nintendo. But
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
really happy to see Gradius make the cut.
Yeah, I was, I said this on the forum. I was disappointed because I wanted to play Gradius 3, which is a little bit more manageable of a game to play. And I also am a big fan of Dragon Spirit, so
Yeah.
oh well, we let democracy take action, and sometimes that's what happens.
Sometimes
The
it
fist was
works and
swift and
sometimes it
sure.
doesn't.
But if you haven't played Dragon Spirit on the Turbo Graphics, Sean, I would say that's a game you definitely want to get and check out if you're a big Dragon Spirit fan. And for all of you listeners out there who have not played Dragon Spirit, give it a shot. It's a fantastic shooter, as Sean would tell you. All right, so on the R-Type final, just ready to get some thoughts on this. I know there was a little on the forums. There was a little discussion about some people saying R-Type games probably weren't their favorite shooters, and just kind of want to get your take on that, and also on this game.
Well,
was this the one that? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I like that it had a really old school feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of brought me back to those, and like NES or Super NES shooters, or even the arcade shooters. That's what drew me in and kept me going.
Was this the one that had the problem where people couldn't check their high scores, or was that Cyanide?
No,
that was UN Squadron.
Yeah,
UN Squadron. Oh, okay.
R-Type Final was a little tough too, because what you had to do, people had a little trouble doing this as well, checking high score on this, because you had to save your game, and then you had to go back through the options menu to see what your highest score was, because your score resets to 0 after every continue, which for us, and a playthrough is sort of perfect. I know someone said, well, I wanted to use I just want to die and just stop right there and not continue, but use my high score. Well, they said because you can exploit some stuff later in the game. Well, my kind of thought on that was, if you're good enough to get further into the game and get a higher score, then you're obviously the best shoot 'em up player of this game anyway, right? So, I mean, I really didn't care. I mean, if people wanted to post that first score, if they continued and got a high score from that point on, I mean, I was fine with it. So
yeah, if they managed to actually use a continue and then still get a winning high score, that's pretty impressive, because usually resetting back to 0 makes you pretty crippled there for any scores.
Absolutely, and you pick up a lot of points usually from the beginning of a game too. So, as I said before, I think that there is a relationship between Gradius and R-Type, which I'm really happy we played them in the same week. It's not something that that I thought about before we played these games, but you've got certain things. You've got the options that sort of float around in R-Type, just like you did in Gradius. I think you have like a shield that you can actually get in R-Type that you also do. Well, you're I'm not sure what it's called. The little icon that sits in front of you is sort of like a shield. Do you know what I'm talking about? The little ball that floats out.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There's a couple different things. I like that the option is like a almost like an assistant to you. You can strategically move it around the screen and kind of bounce it off yourself, or put it in front or behind.
Right.
And, so that was pretty neat.
Yeah, and it also had like the little options as well, like you had in Gradius. Just a little kind of like little flames. I think they're like little balls that floated above you that would fire as well.
Right.
And so you had that as well, which was really cool. But going back to what you were talking about, Sean, the power up or the ball, I really like that portion of the game, because you can, like you said, you can throw it, you can manipulate it, you can make it come back to you, or stay out on, like a boss enemy or something like that. But you could also use it as a shield, because it would absorb shots. And that becomes a big part of that game, and being able to score high is by manipulating that and using that to absorb shots, either from the front or the back, so...
Seems like a logical evolution off of Gradius's just plain attacking options.
Right. And shields, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, and I don't know what everyone's favorite part of this game, but I really, really thought this was one of the most beautiful games that we've played this month. There were a lot of stages that had this like really liquid feel. I think it was the second stage that had the water that you could go beneath or stay above. And just the look of it, like sort of the flora and fauna, of that board, and then also just like I said, the liquid. It was really beautiful. It was a really really pretty game to play.
Yeah, I wish I could have seen more of it. I only made it to the second level, so
Yeah. I don't think I made it much further. I think I made it to the third. So, but yeah, it's a really beautiful game. And I had mentioned something with when we were playing Gradius. There was this, you could actually skip stages, and there was something very similar to that in R-Type Final. I was playing a few times, and what would happen is my stage 2 would be different than it was the first time. So it was just sort of a random, sort of generated thing of these sort of almost hidden stages that you would play, and I thought that was just completely fantastic. Did
Yeah,
any
that's
of you?
always kind of interesting. I didn't. This is actually one of the games I don't own, so I didn't get a chance to play this. I just watched a little bit of it on YouTube. But yeah, I always like it when they do that, where it's not just straight memorizing things. It's more like you have to get good at the techniques and learn them, because the stages are changing so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had decent participation in R-Type Final, but it wasn't. And I've noticed this through the weeks. We've had sort of like, it seems like a retro game has a lot of participation, as Gradius did, and a lot of high scoring there. But then the more modern game seems to have a little bit of a bit of a drop off, and people sort of posting scores later in the week. And I think people are just trying to be focused like on one game at a time, and then posting a score or waiting for scores to come up, and then trying to move up or beat those scores as they get posted. So
We'll see how it goes in
I
week
think
3.
it's
But
a retro bias.
do you really?
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
I
of
wouldn't be
course.
surprised.
I think I kind of agree, because throughout all of the playthroughs we do, it always seems to kind of favor the retro side a little bit more than the modern, except for the odd month.
Yeah, well,
I think it's just the crowd we have on RFGen. It's a bit more of an older generation for the most part.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
There's some truth in that. I do
And
think
we
too
picked
that
some not quite common games on the modern side, like R-Type Final isn't like some dirt common game, and neither is Cyanide for that matter. So.
yeah. Well, I don't think
But
many of the games on the modern side are dirt common games in
Right.
general. I mean, I think that I love shoot 'em ups. It's one of my favorite genres, but I think on the more modern systems, I think that we don't get a lot of that, at least in the States. I can't speak for what's released in Japan or anywhere else overseas, but it almost seems like a genre that's sort of dying out in a way. And
yeah, it's definitely something that had its heyday in arcades and all that. And once those died out, people are a little less interested in it.
yeah, I think we're moving on to more first person shooter type things. Those are the big thing now. It's a popularity. It's really a popular thing, because I was looking for, I was thinking, well, I'm getting the PlayStation 3 for Christmas, and I'm thinking, well, I'm gonna see what kind of shooters there are on the system. I mean, there's really nothing. I think there's like one helicopter shooter, that's really hard to find on the entire PS3, and then I'm just kind of like, wow,
Yeah, it's a little disappointing.
Yeah, it is. So I think, I think a lot of it has to do with when you're playing shmups. I think you kind of have to go back and play more retro titles, because that's really where they were available. So, but just my opinion.
Maybe with the abundance of first-person shooters nowadays, someday I could do some sort of FPS competition or something like that. You never know.
Sure, why not?
Well, also we didn't really play anything that would be considered a bullet hell, and that's
true.
That's where shmups are now,
You're
and
right.
we really didn't touch on that genre. There are actually quite a few on the Xbox 360. A lot of them aren't released in North America, but there are a lot that are, and we could have done Ikaruga, or there's a lot, the bullet hell genre that we didn't touch on for this competition is definitely kind of a side side thing that we didn't do. So,
But even those have moved more toward PC games, right? I mean, I can't speak for the Xbox 360, but I know on the GameCube, really all you have is Chaos Field and Ikaruga, and sort of bullet hell shooters on that
yeah.
system. So even so, even something as late as or I guess kind of mid range as far as video games are concerned now, as the GameCube, there's still not a lot. Still not a lot on that, and shooters have changed too. I mean, it's not just the typical, ship shooters that we have these days, or that we used to have. You've got a lot more stuff like rail shooters, which we'll definitely talk about
like
later.
Sin and Punishment, which actually I was going to mention. I think for week 3 we could see a bit more of a split evenly between the games, because I think Sin and Punishment is going to be pretty popular.
Yeah. It's a cool game, but I do kind of disagree about that, but
we'll see. But I don't know. Once you start playing, it's pretty fun. And like personally, between that and Lightning Force, I'm preferring Sin and Punishment right now.
Oh, okay. So right now we're as everyone knows, we record these a little earlier, so we've all gotten to play a little bit of some of the games, and we're at the end of week 2 right now as we're recording this, and the 2 games are UN Squadron and Cyanide on the Xbox. We recently, and congratulations to Mr. Jerry Greenwood for actually finishing UN Squadron. As Jamie had mentioned before the call, we didn't think anyone would be finishing a game this month, as hard as some of these games are. So big congrats to him. Congrats.
Impressive.
Yeah. So I guess while we're at it, I'll go ahead and announce the participants for this month. We've got Metal Fro, one of our newer members, who actually put up 10 points on each of the first 2 games, and is really kind of taking over the competition right now.
Yeah, currently into week 2, he's in the lead.
Yeah,
20 points.
Yeah, Jerry Greenwood's really putting it on him though. He's had some great scores. It looks like he's didn't play one of the games in the first week, but hopefully we'll see him kind of press on and move up and duke it out toward the top. And Retro Rage has been putting up some good scores as well. And also participating, myself, Tech Wizard, Grey Ghost 81, Duke Togo actually played some Gradius, Engineer Mike, and AE.TC has been playing some with us. He just posted his first score as we speak. But to go to UN Squadron, this is a very popular shooter for the Super Nintendo. I'm curious, this was a title when I started collecting for the Super Nintendo. I always thought it was a hidden gem, but I was quickly corrected that no, people know about this game.
Yeah, this game is awesome. I've had it in my collection for a while, and I'm not even like a shmup guy, but I knew about this game like a long time ago that it was a must-have, and I have a pretty cool like recent nostalgia for this game because it was like a year or 2 ago, just one night. One summer night, it was hot, but it was like raining and kind of cooling off in the evening, and I just popped it in to try it out, and I ended up getting all the way to the final boss because I was just like blown away by how cool the game was and how deep it is and the progression system. And I got to the end. I couldn't beat the final boss. I was playing it on easy or whatever the easiest difficulty is. Very easy, I think. Mm-hmm. But still, my experience that night was like, wow, like just unforgettable. Like, I remember the first time I played UN Squadron. Like, that's how cool of a game it is, Well,
it's a neat game. It's published by Capcom, which, is an immediate draw for anyone, as most people know. I mean, just a very popular developer, if they're producing something on the Super Nintendo, the graphics are going to be tight. It's going to be a fun game. You start off being able to select between 3 pilots, which is, of course, Jerry has told me already. The pilot I've selected is a piece of crap. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. But good to know, I guess. It's one of those I was kind of thrown into, and I didn't realize. Okay, well, what's the difference between these fighters? They give you an idea, but you really don't realize how that kind of affects you or impacts you up to end game, And so I guess I picked my pilot because my pilot could take the most damage, And that was sort of my thought on that. I was like, I'm probably not going to make it to the end of this game anyway. I'm trying to go for a high score up front, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I posted on the forum that I stopped playing it, because I'm not I guess we should discuss the whole problem with the high score thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, what a cluster that was, because we didn't realize that the game, for how great it is, does not display your high score after you game over, whether you continue or whatever. Like, so
what kind of shoot 'em up is it to not have a good high score?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like unthinkable. Like, what this design choice, I can't figure out why they would do that. But yeah, I found it very stressful to try to pause the game before I died, and it was taking away from my enjoyment. So
Yeah.
I cried like a baby and stopped playing the
game. It almost seems like it might be better to have a video going while you're doing it, because then you wouldn't have to worry about it. You could just like take a freeze frame out of the video and use that to post your high score at the end.
There you go. If I had a capture device, I would do that.
Yeah, or even just have a camera sitting beside you on like a table or something.
Yeah, and I tried to get around it. I mean, anytime we have a competition month, I mean, there are ways that people can manipulate a lot of the games that we play, whether it's changing the settings as far as easy to hard, or whether it be punching in some sort of code, playing with a game genie, you know, whatever. I mean, our community is one where we rely on a lot of trust. So I think that everyone, you know, has been very trustworthy as far as what their scores are. And so my kind of thought on it was, okay, you know, kind of keep beside of you what the top 3 scores are during the game. Once you surpass one of the scores, pause your game real quick, take a quick photo, keep playing, you know, not something that's going to disrupt you too much. And then when you get to the end of the game, just sort of jot down what your score was, you know, as long as you can kind of see you know, a photograph of someone surpassing the other score, you know, there's not going to be much of a debate about where you fell sort of in between scores, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, we were all with that. That's fine.
Yeah. So that was sort of a way to get around it, but I definitely, I'm with you, Sean. I think, you know, why is it this way? Why did they decide to, you know, not have a score? I mean, you obviously get a score in the game. Why can't I see it, you know, when it's over, when the game's over? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
A little frustrating. The game is tough as nails, I would say, on normal mode. Boss battles are pretty cool. But one of the things I think is really neat about it is the how you have the trucks and the you know, where you can score extra points, and then you also have the enemy aircraft that go towards your base that you have to defend your base from before they get there, or you have to fight every battle once they get to your base.
Yeah, this is one of the early attempts at like a shmup RPG hybrid. I mean, we have more games like that nowadays with Infinite Space, and there are others, but you can actually grind in this game, kind of just, you know, doing the trucks and doing all the different side missions. You got to be careful because your base is getting attacked all the time, but if you can handle yourself when that happens, you can really bank and become powerful. So it's definitely like the progression thing is so cool in this game. It's really amazing what they did.
Yeah, it's interesting that you actually have to defend things too. It's not just an all-out attack the whole time. Like, you have kind of things you have to escort then. This is one of the ones I didn't play, so I don't know from experience.
Yeah, you start with a map. You have one mission that you can open, and then as soon as you finish that one, a lot more open, but the whole time you have like a home base that's being attacked, so you have to choose. It's almost like a real-time strategy when you're in your menu selection screen. And then, but if you wait too long, you just have to go into a level that is all airplanes and you're fending off the attack. And so there's no like real consequence, but it's like a contextual idea, exactly. It's like a dramatic contextual part of the story coming into the gameplay.
Kind of an explanation for why you're doing what you're doing, not just generic shooting everything for no reason. Right.
Well, this thing, I wanted to do more research on this, but I didn't really have time. It's based on a manga, which I don't know if it actually is an anime or not, but it's called I'm going to mess it up. I want to say Area 88. I know it's something 88. I believe Area 88. So this whole thing is based on an established fiction, and that's part of what makes it so rich, I think. You have established characters and a story, going into it. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was probably released before manga was really big in the US too. So it seems to translate very well to people who just really love shooters. Sometimes that can be a detriment, right, to some games. You have an idea of how something should, be in your mind, and it's either worse or better than what you thought it was going to be. So
I just did a little quick wiki search here, and it looks like it was Area 88. And apparently there's also, they did a crossover update for the game called Ace Combat Infinity at one point, where it added aircraft used by the main characters of Area 88 into that game. But otherwise, it looks like the only game based off of it was UN Squadron, which was ported to like everything.
Yeah. So the other game that we're playing this week is Cyanide on the Xbox, and very, very interesting shooter.
Yeah, I think you're the only one who's going to be able to talk about this. Because now here's the thing. You know what's funny? Just a quick aside. I've never had problems with motion sickness when playing a video game. I can play anything. Like, you can flash colors at me. I can play Mario Galaxy forever. Change the perspective. No problem. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos lately. One had like cool. There's a level in the game Cool Spot where the background is scrolling really fast, and it was like, be careful, this will give you motion sickness. And I'm like, nah. So I watched it, and it really turned my stomach. I couldn't believe it. So I go to watch some video on Cyanide today, and I couldn't handle it, man.
Really?
All the perspective changes and everything. I think if I was playing the game, I would be fine, but something about watching, these twisted, I should try and watch a video of Mario Galaxy or something to see how it would affect me. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a neat game. It's a beautiful game. The if anyone hasn't watched the opening to this game, it's one of the coolest openings out there. You're basically your enemy. He's a prisoner. It's this sort of shirtless, like beautiful boy. I think we spoke about this during the Symphony of the Night discussion. Is I'm gonna mess this up again. Bushonen or something to that nature, which means beautiful boy. It's this character, and it's just this beautiful human. You're like, how could this person be evil? But you get these like little smirks and these kind of looks, and the guy literally becomes like the most evil thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's just these little quirks in body language in this sort of opening sequence, and it's really cool. And if you haven't watched the opening, again, go back and do that. So it starts out. It's got a good story going. It's sort of a 3D shooter, as you mentioned. You're completely always changing perspectives as far as your shooting. And it's a thumbstick shooter, so you're basically using both thumbsticks. One is guiding your plane, and the other is guiding your fire, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I always really like those. Just so it makes it more interesting than shooting straight all the time.
Yeah. It's a very beautiful game. It's sort of like you're inside of a machine or inside of a system. You're sort of trapped into this, and you have to get through the machine to battle I can't think of the evil guy's name right now. Maybe it'll pop into my head later. But you're basically, he's become part of this machine, and he's sending these enemies at you as you're trying to battle through it and to a final confrontation with him. It's a really pretty game. It's really tough. But as I've played more of it, I've learned to appreciate it quite a bit more. The power-ups and things like that aren't as exciting as they are on a lot of games. And so while there are things that do enhance your shooting, it's not like a game sort of like like Lightning Force where you're getting these continual awesome like weapon upgrades. So to me, that's a little bit of disappointing, but I think the gameplay as it is so great that it's one that I would recommend. I know a lot of people complain about Xbox not having a lot of titles, and there's really no use having an Xbox because most of the good games are ported to another system. But this is one of the games that really, to me, really stands out on this system, and I think it's worth owning an Xbox to have this game. It's typically floats around $10 or so. It's definitely
most
one.
Xbox games are pretty affordable.
Yeah. It's definitely one you should have in your system. So.
Yeah, I'm watching a video as you're talking about it, and it's definitely one I am interested in buying now. And the whole thing kind of reminds me of like some of the battles in the prequel movies of Star Wars. With like all the fancy camera moves and lasers everywhere and all that kind of stuff. It's just really cool and fun to watch.
Yeah. As of now, I have not posted any scores, but I did play some before our call, so I do have a score to post by the end of the night. But hopefully, I'll be able to get in a few more runs before that and improve that to get somewhere near the top by the end of the week. So we'll move on to Lightning Force. I know we haven't played this game yet or have not started week 3, but I think some of us have gone ahead and played this or at least played it in the past and can talk a little about this game. Lightning Force is on Sega Genesis and is the, am I correct in this, the 4th installment of the Thunder Force series?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually, I was looking, again, I played it emulated, and when I was looking at the list of ROMs, I didn't have a ROM called Lightning Force, but I did have a ROM called Thunder Force 4, which is what I played, and what my reading up on it is that, Thunder Force 4 was released in North America as Lightning Force, but I don't know if I was playing a European game or, you know what I mean? So
right.
In any event, I may not register a score for this because I'm not sure if I'm playing the right game, but I believe we're going to be talking about the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have no idea. I have not done the research as far as why this game was called Lightning Force, why they decided to change the name, because I know that that overseas it was actually called Thunder Force 4. It was a very popular series. And I also don't know why they spelled the name wrong.
Lightening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I trying to whiten in this game? I can't figure it out. But yeah, it's a just a fantastic shooter. I was playing some of it today. I've played a lot of the Thunder Force series, but never really played much of Lightning Force. And it's pretty cool. I mean, you start out and there's 4 stages, and you get to select the order of the stages you want to go to first, which I think's a very cool concept. And for our month of competition, I feel like some people are going to be better at certain stages than others, and are going to pick different routes as far as how they want to move about through this game.
Yeah, I thought that was neat. Go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
I think when I first played it, I might have accidentally chosen what's essentially the hardest level first because, like, I come in and there's just stuff everywhere and all these ships that you can't damage and like small little passageways to fit through. And
I know that.
There's like the air raid one.
Yeah. Yes. That's a tough
it was
one.
Quite the trial by fire with that. Afterwards, I actually looked up and tried to find if there is a suggested order for like easiest to hardest.
Yeah.
And I tried that, and it was much better. A little bit better learning curve.
Yeah. I think there's a certain path you can pick, and knowing our participants on the forums, and just to reiterate how much fun we have doing this. It is a competition. There is a prize for winning this competition this month. It's a really awesome like wrestling belt with a spinner in the middle with a model plane that's going to spin on the belt when I get through putting it together. But one of the most awesome things about our community is that everyone is so helpful, and everyone even talks about, hey, try going this way, use this pilot instead of that one. Everyone wants it to be a good competition and wants to have a lot of fun with it, but they also want to help each other out. And I think that's really neat, and it kind of brings the community together as we're playing.
Yeah, no one's trying to sabotage each other to get a higher score or something like that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So, fun game. Again, one of the types of games where you can just It borrows a lot from, as we've seen, Gradius, where you do get the options where you can select. But it also has a sort of an option where when you get new weapons, you can kind of scroll through and pick weapons that maybe will shoot more behind you, as opposed to in front of you when you're in certain spots where you have to shoot behind yourself.
Yeah, I really like that you can actually choose the weapon and you don't have to override it with a better one or something like that. You can go back to the worst ones if you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if anyone realized, because I didn't. Well, I guess we haven't gotten to week 3 yet, so maybe someone will point it out. But if you die with one of the upgrade weapons, you lose that upgrade. But if you go back to one of the default ones, if you see yourself maybe about to die, you can switch to a default, and then you won't lose any of your upgrades, because it only makes you lose the one you were selected on.
Right.
So once I figured that out, that helped quite a lot, because I kept losing all my best weapons, and it's like, oh, well, if I do this, then I won't lose anything.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is one of those games that really implements what's ahead of you and what's behind you really well, and forces you to kind of choose your weapon that you're using in a certain part of an area, and implements the backward shooting really well. Some games, it's sort of an afterthought, or you'll just have some enemies sort of sneaking up behind you and you got to take those out. But what I like about Lightning Force is that with the bosses and everything, it really implements the backward shooting with the bosses as well. And the bosses on this game are phenomenal. They're very intricate. They're tough as nails. I mean, you have to put a ton of fire into them before they go down.
I noticed.
But you'll take out one part of a boss, and then then the boss may switch up its technique. So it's a really intricate system, and you can tell that there was, as we've talked before about other games, a lot of love put behind this game. A lot of really neat concepts, and
this was one of the most attractive of the retro games, at least out of the ones I've seen so far.
Yes.
It had a lot of layers to it when you're outside above the ocean there, and you can see the clouds moving independently of the mountains behind. And
absolutely,
it's a really good looking game.
It is a nice looking game. I may get some argument from this, but I really think that the Sega Genesis was the best shoot 'em up systems out there. I think that they really took a lot of time. They produced a lot of shooters for the system, a lot of, especially the spaceship shooters. I know the Super Nintendo has some great ones as well, but to me, I feel like the Sega Genesis is kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to shooters. I don't know.
Sega in general seems to be more of an arcade-friendly system. Like Dreamcast and Saturn are kind of the same way too. Whereas Nintendo is more platformer-focused and adventures and RPGs.
Right. So we'll move on to Sin and Punishment, which will be the game we play in week 3 on the modern side. It's actually Sin and Punishment Star Successor. This is the second in the series. We did not get the first game in the series.
At least not until Virtual Console.
Right. All right. Let me just put in my 2 cents here. I gotta steal the floor. This is I've been dying to talk about this game since I played it. Okay.
Have at it there, John Travolta.
I have this. So when we talked about Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Rich, you and I had a quick little aside about how there's really no such thing as a perfect game. We said that game is so close to perfect, but there's these like imperfections with the menus and the item systems. And then actually I wasn't on the Super Metroid show with you guys, but you reiterated that point that Super Metroid is so close to being a perfect game. But, there's really no such thing as a perfect game. And for the most part, I kind of used to agree with that sentiment. Sin and Punishment is the perfect video game.
Oh.
It is objectively the best video game I have ever played. And I've played many video games, and I wouldn't put it in my top 10 as a favorite video game.
Right.
It is a workshop in game design. It is the coming together of hundreds of little perfect ideas into a product that, I'm getting shaken up talking about it. It is a thing of beauty. And if you don't play this game for our competition or for what, like, it is a criminal shame, like, how underrated and overlooked this game is.
Yeah.
Get it, play it. It is a transcendent experience.
Well, I'll say this. You'll get some agreement from Krabby. Krabby is going to hear this and going to be really excited to hear you say that. He's the one that really pushed me to purchase this game. He had done, I guess, an article a few years ago about his favorite games on the Wii, as the Wii was sort of, at its final leg before the Wii U was released. And this is one of his picks, and he says this is one of his favorite games on the system. I know when he came to the U.S., at one point he picked up a ton of the game of this game, because at one point it was selling for around $10 new.
Yeah,
and
that's when I got it, when it was that cheap, actually.
I did too.
I think I got mine pretty cheap too. Yeah,
but I think the price of the game has gone back up to around $20, $15-$20, if I'm not mistaken. It is one of those titles. If you have a Wii, it is one of the premier games for the system.
Absolutely,
It's good. It uses a lot of the controls. It's a kind of a great balance, which I haven't figured out yet. That's my problem with the game. I'm not with you on calling this the perfect game, but a lot of it has to do with my inexperience with the Wii. I have a Wii, but it's one of my lesser played systems, so I don't really have a good grasp on the nunchuck and the Wii remote yet. So I'm having a little trouble right now.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve for that, for any Wii game, really. Like, it's kind of awkward when you're so used to having the whole controller combined to have it split into your two hands.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's one of the things that I like about it, is that it did something that to me was almost impossible, which is made me like love motion controls. I'm in the camp that motion controls are unnecessary, and that developers and hardware designers are barking up the wrong tree with motion controls from the get-go. With the exception of like Wii Sports Bowling, and stuff you can do at a party. I'm not down with motion controls. Mm-hmm. But when I played this game, again, like the relationship between what was going on in my left hand with the nunchuck and aiming with my right hand with the Wiimote, it was just incredible. Like that's why I'm saying this game is perfect. They got motion controls right. Like they made me love motion controls. You couldn't. I mean, I know the original Sin and Punishment was on N64, but if you play that game, you're on the ground at all times. You're not flying around like you are in this game. So they were able to add that, and they succeeded in making motion controls the best option, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, I really love how you're trying to dodge something, and first, until you realize that you can fly, you're thinking, "Oh, I'm stuck on the ground. How am I going to dodge this thing?" And then you just bump up, and it's like, "Oh, wow, that was really unexpected," but it works so well and it's smooth, and it's suddenly cool because you realize you have freedom to move anywhere across the screen.
It's a very difficult game for me. I mean, you're using your A and B buttons on your Wiimote to aim and to target, and then you're having to use the same to point your targeting icon at your enemies, and then on the other stick you're moving your player, and then you're also you've got a jump, and then you've got a sort of evade button, if I remember correctly. Right. And it's, for me, it's just so much going on at the same time. I haven't grasped it yet, but I feel like I'm gonna have to play through it. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna have to play through this several times. I did beat the first stage, which was pretty good. And I got really far on the second stage in my first play, but it's one of those things that I'm really gonna have to just sit down and really get a better handle on the controls. And I think that's a real challenge for someone like me who plays a lot of retro games, a lot of games with not a lot of buttons.
Yeah. I think the thing that helped me the most was evading, really, because you can pretty much spam it, and it's giving you invincibility whenever you use it. So that helped me a lot, especially in areas where you're fighting a boss and there's a lot of fire around, and you just keep hitting that button, and you're going to get through a lot farther than you would without it.
Yeah. So, again, beautiful game. The story is interesting. I'm not really familiar with the the first game and know kind of what's going on, but the story, it seems like you're trying to escape somewhere, and you've got this being who is after the girl. I'm assuming, and having not played more of this game, and maybe Sean, you can give us a little perspective on this. Is it just one of those games where the story just kind of develops as you play? Because you don't get a lot from the beginning of it.
The story is not very deep. I'll give you that. But again, I'm standing by my argument that this, the story doesn't need to be deep. It's
Sure.
it is basically what you said it is, and you go through this syndicate of people who are trying to get to the girl, and different things happen. But that's the gist of it.
Yeah. And I'll say also, you get to play with the girl. You can choose the guy or the girl, right? The guy protecting her or the girl. So
correct.
I only played for about half an hour so far, but I started with the girl, and I think I would probably prefer the guy, because when you're choosing it, it says the girls lock on automatically, and the guy you have to manually lock on. And I think I would prefer manual, because the auto lock on is really annoying. Like, you get stuck on something that takes a lot of hits while you're being smacked by all the little guys, and it makes it more difficult in my mind. I'd like having full control over what I'm shooting.
That's fair.
So moving on, in our final week of our competition, the games we're going to be playing Ray Crisis on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, and Automedius Excellent on the Xbox 360.
Also known as Gradius XL's edition.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. We can start on that game if you want this time, and this is one that I don't have an Xbox 360, so I'm not going to be playing this game. But from what I understand, it is sort of a Gradius remake, a boob 'em up, if you will.
Yeah, it really is.
So I'll let you guys go at it and talk about this game.
Yeah, it's something. When you're playing it, it basically is Gradius. Like, there's not much to it beyond that. I mean, even I think it's probably based off Gradius 3, because that's what felt most similar to me. The pattern of the enemies, even at the beginning of the level, it's the exact same as what it is in Gradius 3. It's just like they reskinned that game. I think they didn't really nail it that great, because there's a lot of problems with it. Like, the hitbox is weird. I think it's kind of taken from a bullet hell kind of hitbox, where you've got your whole ship, but only a small little dot in the center of it can actually be hit. It throws you off quite a lot if you're not used to that, because you're expecting to be hit anywhere, but then you're squeezing into holes where you don't think you should be able to fit.
Right. The reason for that being is that you're actually, we should explain, it's a character flying the ship, and the form of your thing is almost like a cross shape, but only the vertical part of it takes damage. So in your mind, it's hard to not be reflexive and not let the person get hit, but that's not where you take damage. So I get what you're saying.
It's somewhere around like their waist area is the weak point, because I've had shots go through the feet and the head, and it didn't do anything. Yeah,
exactly. And I just want to throw in, like, I'm not a huge anime fan, but I like anime, and I don't mind stuff that's a little bit cheeky, a little racy, but this almost goes too far for me. And I think it's a matter of, if they showed just a little less boob, it would be totally fine. But they just, with the character designs, they just went a tad too far. And that's why I think some people on our forum thought it was a little lacking in taste, and I would agree. But it's not a bad game.
No,
I don't think it's a bad game. I'm enjoying it. You know what I mean? I've played it before, and I just kind of revisited it to refresh my memory. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like I said, being based off Gradius 3, gameplay wise, it's really good. Because Gradius 3 is really good.
Right, and I think that this is the only game we're playing that's in HD, so it looks really good compared to all the other stuff that we're playing.
Yeah, visually, it's pretty impressive. But that's just kind of the way it is, being modern, and not that old. I think it was 2009 or 2010 or something like that.
Yeah,
it wasn't really that long ago. But the sexifying everything in Gradius is something. I mean, they've got even a thing where, like, when you're choosing the ships, you can move the cursor and, like, you can touch the characters, and they have these kind of disturbing reactions, and it's something. Like, I don't know if you guys realize that, but I remember Israt, I think he was doing some trophy hunting on this, and or achievement hunting, and he mentioned there's this achievement called like angel touching or something like that. And
Wow.
it's, yeah, taste is not something I would put in the same sentence as this game.
Yeah, I'm from the same camp. I agree with Sean. I like the anime stuff. I'm not an anime fan. I'm not a collector or reader of a lot of manga, but I do really enjoy graphically some of the artwork based on that. And I saw this game. I was a little curious about it. It looked pretty cool. Did watch a little video on it at one point, and the gameplay to me just didn't look as exciting as some of the other shooters that I'm used to.
Well, you know what it actually is like to me. It was kind of a relief because it's almost like Jamie saying it's a lot like Gradius 3 is kind of interesting because, like I said, I would have rather played Gradius 3 because it's slower and a little bit easier, and that's kind of how I feel about Automedius, is that it's a little bit more manageable to actually play. You're not just getting bombarded in crazy patternless ways, by everything. So I kind of like it a little bit better for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I thought the enemies were pretty close to the patterns that Gradius had, so I don't know what differences you're seeing there, but I found the thing that actually made it a little bit harder for me was that there's so much detail in the background that I was being hit by things because I didn't even realize that they were in the foreground. I thought they were part of the background.
Yeah, I had that happening.
It's kind of confusing
with a lot of the games. Actually, that happened to me a little bit in R-Type before I got used to everything. But yeah, that will happen. And I just want to throw out there that the like all of the Konami Gradius games have like the same first level, like except for Light Force is a little different, but Gradius 2, Parodius Da. I didn't play Sexy Parodius, but like I'm sure it's the same exact thing. Like the design of the first level is almost exactly the same on all of them.
Yeah. Sort of that kickback we talked about with as you mentioned one time before, like the Kirby games with
right.
it's kind of the same tree boss and that sort of thing. Just always kick back to the classic, know where you came from, kind of deal. Which is neat.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah. And Floyd, did you have any thoughts on this? I know that you had mentioned on some of the forums that this game was one that was really kicking your butt on one of our chats.
I think it was Automedius that gave me the most difficulty. I don't know. I'm not very good at shoot 'em ups to begin with, but no, I think I love the anime art style of this, and it was really cool to catch all the Konami cameos. But no, game kicked my butt.
Fair enough.
Actually, this is off topic, but I just totally remembered. I was at my friend's house here and helping her clean up, and we found some old Yu-Gi-Oh cards of hers, and I didn't realize that. I'm not sure if Konami makes them or if they have some sort of deal with them, but the first card that I picked up, it was called Gradius's Option, and it was a picture of the Gradius ship and it had an option, and it's like, I didn't realize that this was any connection to Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like, what? And I started looking through trying to find more Gradius references, and I didn't know Gradius well enough to recognize anything else, but it was just interesting, really weird place to find Gradius references.
Maybe we can have one of our listeners maybe elaborate on that a little bit. Yu-Gi-Oh! Falls into the category for me as Pokemon. This is just something I know nothing about.
Yeah, personally I have no interest in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I came across it and I just thought it was really weird and interesting.
Yeah.
It is a Konami property, right? Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, so that's probably your connection right there.
Yeah, I mean it had Konami on the name, but I never knew that. I've heard a lot of people being into Yu-Gi-Oh! I didn't realize it had any connection to Konami. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. So the game that moving from a game with great graphics to a game with what I would consider very poor graphics, we're going to move on to Ray Crisis, which was released on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. As I just mentioned, to me this game is very lacking. It was one of those games I was really surprised that this is the game that made the cut in the voting for the PlayStation. I thought, maybe we would get an R-type game, or maybe we would get, something else. I know people wanted to play Einhander, which is regarded as one of the, the best games on that system, but as far as the price point was, yes, that's a game that's really shot up. I mean, I think it's around $75-$80 now,
oh, wow.
Maybe even close to $100. So that was my reasoning for eliminating it, even though I know there's a lot of people calling to play.
Maybe if
game.
it was like the only game we were playing this month, but not when we have 7 others to pick up too.
Sure. But for me, and anyone who's played Ray Crisis can talk about it. I thought the graphics were very poor. It reminded me a lot of Cyanide, but just it didn't look very good. The bosses, they all look the same. It was just bizarre, and it's one of those games that you can just keep continuing until you finally beat it, which, I guess I'm okay with that, but typically, but this time I kind of wasn't. It was a very lax and sort of boring game to me. I don't know. Am I on my own here? Am I the only one that's played this one, or?
Yeah, I watched a little on YouTube, and I would have liked to have played it. Yeah, the PlayStation voting was a little weird because it's not like Ray Crisis is a cheap game either, and I'd be interested to see who actually plays this game for the competition besides that cheater Metal Throw. I don't know who voted for it or who owns a copy, but there hasn't been much talk about it. But we're not there yet, so it remains to be seen. But I'm interested to see how this plays out. I would have also liked to have seen something different. Not that there's not a lot of actually when we had discussed there were some cheaper shooters on the PS1, but there's almost none that are like easy to find. Even when I was saying Mobile Light Force, but you can't just go out and buy Mobile Light Force. It's not worth a lot of money, but you have to find a copy. So it's weird.
Right. It's It is. I mean, Ray Crisis, I think, is kind of pinpointed at about $40. That's about where it sits. I was lucky enough to find a copy in a lot with Resident Evil Nemesis and some other. Let's see. Gosh, what was
Darkstalkers 3. I was really jealous of that lot when you got it.
Yeah, Krabby jumped on that Darkstalkers because I already had Darkstalkers. So and I also had Resident Evil. So I think I got that lot for around $50 or so, which was worth it because, it sort of made it where my copy of Ray Crisis was pretty much, a few bucks at the most.
Yeah.
So that worked out well. But again, we gave people time to try to track this game down, but it was one of the tougher ones. So I understand we probably will not have a lot of participation, which I guess is good for me. I can post a score and, I get several points for that game at least because I'm I don't know, I'm around 4th or 5th place right now. I'm struggling, but I'm hanging in there, and hopefully hoping to better my scores and definitely hoping to finish Gradius. I would really love to beat that game. I got very, very close on one of my runs.
I feel like I could maybe do it because I've been the third one, but the third one overall felt a little more manageable than this. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to it after the competition.
Okay. So we know that Sean's favorite game during the shooter playthrough month was Sin and Punishment. Obviously, as he called it, the perfect game. How about you other guys? What was probably your favorite so far that you've played or experienced?
Of the ones I played, I think I would probably go with Sin and Punishment as well.
Okay.
It didn't feel so overwhelmingly difficult. Like it was still hard, but it was more of a manageable difficulty. Whereas Gradius, which is a really good game, it's so difficult and so frustrating, and I don't really feel like I'm having all that much fun while I'm playing it.
Right. How about you, Floyd?
Put me down for Sin and Punishment too.
Wow. Okay.
I kind of like that point and shoot thing going on with the motion controls, and it's I think it's got that rail shooter type thing, which is pretty appealing to me, and I'm looking forward to playing it a little more competitively in week 3.
Awesome. For me, I'd probably at this point I'm probably choosing Lightning Force. That's the favorite that I've played so far. I'm excited about week 3. Looks like we're all excited about week 3, and I am definitely looking forward to putting more time into Sin and Punishment. I do love it. I think it's, again, visually stunning and a lot of fun to play. It's just going to take me a little more time, I think, than a lot of other people who play more modern games to sort of get a handle on the controls. But
you know what, Rich? I would recommend put the difficulty down to easy and play level 0 more than once if you have to, because that's a tutorial.
Right.
So I would say do that to get used to the controls and get used to, like Jamie said, get used to evading all the time, because that's a big part of the gameplay. It's not like R-Type where you can just kind of move and kind of weave and go in between things. You have to use that dodge mechanic to almost like jump or transition over certain unavoidable things, and that's a big part of the gameplay.
Right. Okay. Well, guys, thanks a lot. That was kind of a good, little tight wrap up of all our shmups. I know that we were going to try to keep this under 20 minutes, which of course for us is impossible. I knew it would be, but I think it was.
I thought maybe 30, but no, we're here an hour and 5 minutes later.
As we said before, well, I think they're just shooters. Surely we will have a lot to say about
shooters.
Yeah. What are we going to have to say about shooters? But great guys. I'm looking forward to playing more of these shooters and a little more in depth, and really looking forward to see how this competition rolls out at the end of the month. So thanks. So on the forums, we decided that we would do something a little special for our year-end wrap-up and talk about our favorite playthroughs of 2014. The way this is going to work, we've sort of set up an order where we've all picked our top 5 games, and we're just going to go into order. Of course, Floyd will go first, Sean, Jamie, and then myself, and we'll just kind of repeat that order until we have our final list of our favorite playthrough games. Remember, you can find us on the forums at RF Generation. We'd like to know what your top 5 favorite games were as well. So please join us there on our discussion thread for this episode, and let's kick some conversation back and forth about it. All right, so we're going to start with Floyd. Floyd's number 5 pick. And before you get started, Floyd, tell us a little bit about how you came up with your list. What does this list sort of best represent for you?
All right, my list, I would say, is made up of games that will give me the most lasting memories, that were the most fun, and that I would say have the most impact on me overall.
Okay.
So to kick things off, my number 5 game is Chrono Trigger.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think this might show up on people's lists a little bit higher than mine, but it's a very essential RPG for any gamer, really. And, it gets to be on my list because it's been something that I've wanted to play for years. It's a quintessential game, and, it hits all those notes right. I mean, it's got great characters, great story, great gameplay. It's the full package.
Okay, good pick. Does anyone else have any thoughts on Chrono Trigger or anything that they liked about this game?
I've got it on my list as well, but it's higher up, so I think I'll talk a little bit more about it when I get to that point. But yeah, I agree. It's definitely. I'd be surprised if it's not in all of our top 5s out of us who played it.
It's not. Spoiler alert, it's not.
Whoa.
Spoiler alert, not in mine either.
Oh, really?
Okay.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
So
We'll have to see.
now, are Jamie and I sort of putting this on our list because we're among the younger guys of the group here, and we didn't quite get to experience this in like the Super Nintendo heyday.
Well, I think just Floyd, and while I was asking how you picked your list, I think we're all going to have different reasons and how we felt about picking our list, and I think that's a big part of mine. I'm not saying I don't like Chrono Trigger. It's one of my favorite RPGs ever. I love Chrono Trigger, but there's a reason I didn't put it on my list, and
Fair enough.
So with that, we'll start or move on to Sean with his number 5 pick. And again, before you start, Sean, tell us a little bit about your list and what you're kind of choosing from.
Sure. The way I chose my list was I tried to pick games that had an impact on me, and I tried to pick games that had successful playthroughs as well. So it's not just my top 5 favorite games out of the list of games that we played, but I also like to factor in participation, and was actually only one of the games that I chose. I was actually the host, but I, felt when it comes up on my list, you'll see I felt I did a good job hosting, so I kind of factored that in. And also, just real quick, for Chrono Trigger, it's the same thing for me. I only played it the first time a few years ago, but I feel like, I love that game, but I didn't revisit it for this playthrough, so I'm not just going to list, Chrono Trigger, that's in my top 5 because of the game itself. I didn't even participate in that playthrough, so anyway.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, so without further ado, let me pull up my notes here. I know what it is, but I just want to look at my notes so I don't forget anything. So my number 5 game is Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker.
Okay.
So this game was kind of important to me because I have never played a Zelda game to completion, and this is my first one.
Oh, really?
And I probably would not have played or picked up. Zelda is not a franchise that I'm into, obviously, and I thought forever that it would be one of those things that I just collect for a collector's sake and never play them, and I'll be like kind of a Zelda poser forever. But I signed up for this playthrough, ended up playing through it, and I know it's kind of a weird place to start with in the Zelda universe, but what I've learned is that you're getting most of the stuff that you would get in any Zelda game. There's common things that go through every single Zelda game, so...
Yeah, they have a lot of repeating elements.
Right. So I'm really glad to have played it. I am a little bit worried about playing any other Zelda games because from what I understand, and there's a podcast called Back in My Play, and they actually just did an episode on the Wind Waker. Mm-hmm. So as an aside, it was cool to be able to listen to that and to fully enjoy it and understand it, to listen to a different group of guys talk about that game for an hour or two or whatever it was, and to be with what they were talking about. But, the consensus is that this game is one of the easiest Zelda games out there, mm-hmm. and I would not have been able to finish it without the item duplication glitch, and I'm kind of apprehensive about trying another Zelda game because of that. Like, I found the end of Wind Waker to be very difficult. But anyway, I really, really liked my time. It was kind of a labor of love. We know the infamous Triforce chart hunt and all that stuff, all the padding near the end of the game. And we talked about all this in the podcast. We don't, no need to rehash the whole thing, but that's my number 5 pick. Was my first ever Zelda game that I played to completion, The Wind Waker.
Yeah, and on a side note, I just Sean actually did a trade with me, and I just got Wind Waker, so I didn't participate in it, but it's exciting to have that now. It's one of my GameCube titles, and looking forward to playing that. And I know at some point, it's obvious that we're going to have to play A Link to the Past. So at some point down the road, we'll be playing that. And Sean, I definitely hope you will join in that retro playthrough. I think it's a game that you will really enjoy if you enjoyed that, and maybe give you a little bit of a different perspective on the Legend of Zelda series. So.
Right, I would probably join in that, depending on what else was going on. But yeah, I would be interested, definitely.
Yeah, I think most Zelda fans say that either A Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time is usually the top pick out of all the series.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll just put everything on hold to play A Link to the Past.
Yeah,
because I would love to participate in that one too.
Yeah.
Anyway, for Wind Waker, that appears a little bit higher up on my list. For many of the same reasons, I want to say, but for a few different personal ones.
All right.
On my list, it's not actually on it, but that's only because I didn't play it this year.
Absolutely.
So if I had, I think it would have been on here.
Yeah, I didn't play it either, so it definitely didn't make my list. So, all right, Jamie, we'll go to you with your number 5 pick, and again, just tell us a little bit about what your criteria was for your list.
All right, so my criteria actually was not exactly opposite, but sort of from a different perspective than Sean and Floyd's, because what they were saying was they wanted to go for how the game left an impact and impression on them, and I was trying to avoid that myself. I wanted to look at a game a little more objectively, and I have a lot of games on here that I left off my list, which normally I'm really excited about, like say The Last of Us and a few others, where I would be like, oh, this is an awesome game. But I wanted to really step back and get out of the kind of nostalgia goggles of when I was playing this and look at it objectively. And so I was sort of saying, well, how does the story mesh with the gameplay, and how well does the soundtrack complement things, and how good does it look graphically for the time period?
You're just being more critical of your choices.
I was attempting to, yeah.
Sort of like a reviewer, if you were to review these games, which would score highest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to be a little more critical and not so opinionated, if I could. And so my number 5, based on that, was Mischief Makers.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't think I would say it's one of the greatest games on this list. There's a lot of other ones that are really good, which I actually left off. But it was just really unique. It sort of blended a lot of different gameplay styles, and the story was pretty well integrated into it, and it was really quirky and just all around fun. I mean, you got a point where you're riding a cat who can jump onto the back of a missile, and like you can grab other missiles and throw them at this boss. It's just an awesome game.
Why isn't that your number 1 game? Just because cats jumping on missiles? Come on.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's a good thing about it, but it's just like it's quirky, and it's got its problems. Like I think the controls are a little bit clunky. So that's sort of the reason it's not higher up on my list, that it is a little bit dated and not the greatest controls, but everything else about it is pretty fun, and to me it made the top 5.
That's a pretty solid choice. I mean, I think it's an often overlooked game. So yeah, it was nice of you to include that.
Yeah, it was something I never even heard of until I started getting into N64 collecting. Actually, most of the games on my top 5 here are ones that I either hadn't heard of or I had very, very vaguely heard of. So it's sort of I'm glad to have finally played most of these and really experienced them.
What's so great about these playthroughs. It's introduced us to so many games that we now very much enjoy.
Absolutely. Forces your hand to play them, but
and
put forth the time commitment. But when you look back over it, you look at the games that we played this year, you're like, wow, I played all of these awesome games this year. I mean, that's it's truly a great resource to have a group of people who are playing all this stuff together, and it just makes it more enjoyable for me. I would never pick up all these games and play them within a year.
I think this is probably actually, like, out of all the years I've been playing games, this is probably the most quality games beaten in a single year, I think.
Yeah.
Like, so many times really I have a lot of crap games and just a few good ones, but
I'll second
this
that.
is like all good games this year.
Yeah. All right, so for myself, my criteria and what I use to come up with this, the 5 games that I picked are games that I've never played before and enjoyed the most. I just had the best time with them. That was simply my criteria, but I wanted to make sure that it was games I'd never played before, and for that reason, as I mentioned when Floyd said Chrono Trigger, that's why I didn't pick that game. I do love Chrono Trigger. I think it's fantastic, and I've played through it twice. But it's my favorite RPG, probably almost ever, and definitely in the top 5 all time.
But you're looking more for new experiences.
Right. I feel like the playthrough for me is just such an enjoyable thing, and what I love the most is just finding that gem that's saying, gosh, I've heard this game is pretty good, but then I played it and it just completely wowed me.
Right.
So, number 5 on my list is Phantasy Star. And the reason I picked this game is I am, as most of you know, I collect for the Nintendo. I'm trying to put together a complete set. I'm 4 games away for a license set. But secondarily, I collect other things too, and some of that is the the Sega Master System.
The Super Master System.
and a big part of that is for nostalgia purposes. Kind of when I was younger, going through the stores. You would always see these games popping up as the rival, the 2 biggies, Nintendo and Sega. And, Sega made it through, actually made the Genesis. And these, I didn't grow up in a community where people played Sega. And so I never got to experience these until later in life. And so to have something, I enjoyed Dragon Warrior so much on the Nintendo, as I mentioned in the previous podcast. And to have something like Phantasy Star to kind of compare it to run along beside of it, was just fantastic for me, and I thought it was just such a fun and great experience, and just getting to enjoy something on that system was great for me. So that's why that was my number 5 pick.
I've got that one on my list too, but it's a little bit higher up, and we'll get to that pretty soon.
Some RPG love going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit of RPG love.
I would actually say that, I didn't play this game, but you guys, like, the playthrough influenced me. That, the Phantasy Star series in general is now on my radar because of the playthrough. And I would like to, maybe if I don't start with the first one, like, play one of the more developed sequels eventually. So I do appreciate that, even though I didn't play it with you guys.
I think the Genesis ones are supposed to be a little better than the first one here. The first one's a bit rough around the edges in some ways.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, Genesis RPGs had never been on my radar, even though I grew up as a Sega kid. Mm-hmm. I think it was me and one other guy in school. We were the 2 Sega kids. But no, that system is just not known for role-playing games. And I'll now definitely be keeping an eye out for those when I'm out hunting. I noticed that Phantasy Star 4 is like $3.50 on Steam right now. So,
oh really?
All you PC guys can go grab that up.
Yeah. We've had a lot of clamoring for Phantasy Star 2 as well. People wanting to revisit that. So there is definitely community wanting to play, more of the Phantasy Star series. So, maybe we can look into that. So,
yeah.
All right.
Could do it for the anniversary of the first one. Do it on March or something.
Yeah,
maybe why not? Yeah.
All right, so Floyd, let's go with your number 4 pick.
So my number 4 was Sean's number 5 game, which is The Wind Waker.
Okay.
I love Zelda games for that sense of exploration, and I mean, like, you play these games and you really do feel like a hero who's out there to save the princess and save the world. They all kind of get petted out in the middle. I mean, that's just sort of a Zelda mechanic by now, but no, I think I loved it. I played it on the Wii U, the HD remake, and it was just a blast to play.
All right. Awesome.
One thing I was going to say that I forgot to mention when Sean was talking about Wind Waker is I know that, Sean, you like all the cutesy style in games, which Wind Waker is pretty good for that too, I think, but I sort of wonder how you would feel about the other games when they have not quite realistic, but more of a Western look to them than the Wind Waker, like less cartoony, So,
you know what? I could see how you would say that, and that you're right about that as far as it being my taste. But I do like cell shaded games, but when I say I like cute stuff, it's more like from an anime style perspective.
Not
but
so much
I mean, having said
look.
Right, and yeah, like only cartoony look is not like what I'm going for. I do like cell shaded games in general, but yeah, when I say cute, I'm more talking about like an anime cute.
Yeah, so then that's good then, because a lot of the other games are really amazing.
He's talking about things with boobs.
Yeah, I was about to say that. You're not talking about like big eyes and bright colors. You're talking about eye candy.
Anyway, my number 4. It's going to surprise you guys probably, but my number 4 was Eco. And to our listeners who listen to our podcast know that I had some struggles with Eco, or if you were on the forum while we were playing it, I, was very vocal about my rage with Eco. But, at the end of the day, looking back, it's one of those games that looking back on it, I'm even more satisfied now having played it even than I was when we recorded the podcast about it. And, I think that unlike System Shock 2, which was kind of a false start, like I didn't even get through it. It was something that I was really excited to do and kind of abandoned it because I couldn't handle it. Eco was kind of more of a labor of love where I wanted to see those big environments and I wanted to have that like silent character interaction, and I wanted to have all that simplicity and design that Team Eco brings to the table. So like I was able to kind of fight my way through things like the environmental puzzles that I'm not a huge fan of to get through this, kind of work of art of a game. And like I said on the podcast when we recorded about it, it's I'm a PS2 fanatic, so it's one of the quintessential PS2 games, and I'm happy to have crossed it off my list. And it was good, you guys put on a really good playthrough of it, and I was really drawn to the game because of what was going on in the forums too. So that's my number 4 there.
I agree. It's on my list too. It's on my list too, a little higher up, but it's there, and I agree with everything you said about the game. Fantastic. Just an experience that I never thought I would have as a gamer. Just the beauty and almost simplicity of the games. Not that they weren't difficult or the puzzle aspect wasn't very challenging, but just it's just I don't know. There's something about it. I mean, just the beauty of it just kind of changed the way I looked at games.
It's kind of a magical game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great choice. My list of it's a good choice. It's in my runners up, but it didn't quite make top 5 for me. Just a little bit too repetitive on the gameplay. Okay. Otherwise, it's amazing, but not quite top 5 material for me.
That's fair. All right. So, what was your number 4, man?
My number 4 was Phantasy Star.
Okay.
Just a little bit above Rich's there. This is the very first time I had played this series, and before the playthroughs came up, I don't even know if I had heard of the series before. Like, it was so off my radar. I might have vaguely heard of it, but I'm really glad that I started on the first game in the series, which is always nice. But also just this is my first Sega Master System game that I've ever beaten as well, and it was really more fun than I expected. Like when I was hearing you're gonna have to use grid paper to map out the dungeons and caves and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, that doesn't sound very fun. But then when I got into it, it adds quite a lot. It really puts you into the shoes of those 80s kids having to do all this stuff that you did back then.
Yeah.
Realizing it's really required if you don't want to just cheat and use a walkthrough. But really added to it for me, and it's got great music and great gameplay and interesting battle systems, and visually it was so good, like compared to NES at the time. It doesn't even compare.
Yeah, one of the best things about that game for me was playing the playthrough with you, and you were really hesitant about playing Phantasy Star, and I told you, I said, well, Jamie, I said, if you don't want to host that month, I said, I'll be happy to do it later. You said, no, I think I'll try it, and just the way you got into it and the way you started like doing the graphs of the caves and the dungeons and things like that, and posting your results of your graphing those out. I mean, just the way you got enveloped with the game made the experience a lot more enjoyable for me too. And that was really a cool thing to do as a community, and a lot of fun. We had tremendous participation that month, if you remember.
Yeah, that was one of our best ones.
Finished that game, and that is a tough game to slug out. So, congratulations to everyone participated that month, and that's one of my most memorable months. And in the
that was
year.
Definitely a good one.
Yeah.
I think I had like 40 maps or something made up by the end, something crazy, because you had to have one for every floor. Like, you couldn't really fit the same floors onto one map, or multiple floors on one map, so it's like every dungeon had 10 or 15 separate graphs, and it was a little crazy, but it was fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those games that if you read about it or if you hear people talk about it, it can be overwhelming, but once you finally get down to playing it, it's probably a really great experience.
Overwhelming, but worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a steep learning curve at the very beginning. Like, it takes a couple of hours before you can feel strong enough to really do much, but once you get going, it's really fun.
Oh, that's like any old school RPG.
Yeah, it's not really a complaint against it. It's just the way it is back then.
All right, so for my number 4 game, my pick, I'm probably going to catch a lot of hell for, but I'll go ahead and put it on there anyway. My number 4 pick was Super Metroid. I know for a lot of people, this was their favorite game. And out of the Metroid series, as far as what I've played, it's limited to Metroid and Super Metroid. And I really thoroughly enjoyed my experience with Super Metroid. And it's not to degrade it in any way by putting it number 4. But I just thought that there were 3 other games that just
outshined it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were 3 more games that were more enjoyable for me.
Okay.
And that I had a better experience with. And again, that's, how I pick my list. But Super Metroid is a fantastic game. I'm not a speedrunner guy, but just the month of people, doing those speed runs, even in our community, knocking it down to an hour and 20-something 20-something minutes. Fantastic. Good community interaction that month. And, a lot of fun, and just super glad. It couldn't have come at a better time, coming off the heels of Symphony of the Night, so great.
I think that's the thing about those like Metroid games or Castlevania games. Like, even if you're not doing well at them, or even if you get lost, I mean, they're still fun. I mean, like, you have that sense of exploration, and it's always that feeling you get when you finally do succeed, or when you find a new area is really rewarding. So yeah, it's definitely something that I would have really loved to have participated on, and I kind of wish that that I would have the opportunity to play that game. But I think I'll sit down with it eventually and finally knock that out of my backlog.
Yeah, it's a great game, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's never played it. It's a great experience, and like you said, none of the backtracking or anything. Nothing about the game felt tedious.
Oh, exactly. So, and I think it's also just as fun to watch as it is to play. I mean, it's speed run almost every year competitively, and that's always fun to watch too.
I definitely think anyone who's enjoyed Castlevania Symphony of the Night has to play this, and
absolutely.
Vice versa. If you enjoyed this, try Castlevania Symphony of the Night, because they're very similar.
And that was the cool thing too. We saw it go both ways. We'd seen people on both playthroughs who had never played Symphony of the Night before, and but they had played Super Metroid, and people who hadn't played Super Metroid play Symphony of the Night, and enjoyed it both ways. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a great experience! So it wasn't intentional again, but it worked out really well for us, I thought, for the year.
Right. That's the magic of the playthroughs.
Exactly. All right. Speaking of magic, Floyd, what was your magic number 3 choice?
My magic number 3 was not quite a magical game, but something that I will not forget for a long time. Any game that has sort of like a post-apocalyptic, I can't say that, post-apocalyptic setting already has my attention, and something that is able to explore how people react in these, unimaginable situations is something that I really want to check out. So that game is Fragile Dreams.
Wait, Fragile Dreams was last year.
That's
you mean
right.
The Last
was
of
that
Us?
Last year?
Yeah, that was 2013. Just say The Last of Us.
Oh, this is under protest.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Break the rules.
Well, I kind of screwed that up. Kind of broke things here.
That's okay.
Anyway,
still a great game.
Fragile Dreams is great, and I kind of liked It did sound like I was going to talk about The Last of Us, didn't it?
I could have sworn that's where you were going with that, man. That's funny.
Go with it still. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay, because we didn't do a retrospective in 2013, so...
Yeah. I was looking at our...
we will put an asterisk beside your list.
Yes, okay, my list is no longer official. Anyway, I think...
playthroughs.
I think I liked... I guess I liked The Last of Us and Fragile Dreams for the same reason, so you can swap them in and out. Anyway, okay. Sean, you're number 3.
All right. Pulling up the notes here. This is a big one. In many ways, this was my favorite playthrough, and I'll get into it. But just there were a couple games ahead of it. But my number 3 is Suikoden. Okay. And there's some reasons for that. So nostalgia is something that we think about when we're thinking about NES games or things that are even older. When we say nostalgia as adult collectors, we're usually talking about our childhoods and trying to reclaim games that we played in our childhood. But Suikoden, as you guys know, my best friend Jesse passed away this year from cancer. And Suikoden is a game that when we played it for the playthrough, it made me nostalgic for the time. It was 2 years ago about that he got me into RPGs finally, because I never wanted to play RPGs, and he got me to borrow Suikoden 1 and 2, and I really liked Suikoden when I played it the first time. And a lot of times with RPGs, you say like, oh, I got to play that one again. And yeah, you can revisit RPGs, but a lot of them are very long, and it's a big time investment to play a game again when you can go play something new. But playing Suikoden again as a community playthrough, it really gave me a nostalgic feeling for a time when my friend was still with us, and in a time that he had a big influence on me and my gaming habits, and introducing me to a lot of new things. So that was a very special playthrough for me, and it's an amazing game, and I think that this is the best hosting job I've done so far as a member of the playthrough committee. Like, I really put my all into making sure the checkpoints were good, and explaining the game and helping people when it was needed, and sharing my thoughts and feelings throughout the whole playthrough. So for those reasons, that's why I chose Suikoden as my number 3.
Yeah, that was a pretty popular month, I think. Quite a few participants that time.
Yep. I do not have Suikoden on my list, and we did mention, for the sake of length of the call, we would not put on our honorable mentions, but if they were mentioned, that we would talk about those. And Suikoden was the game that was teetering, on being on my list. It didn't make it, but I wanted to put it on my list so bad. If I would have gotten to pick 6, this would have been on there. But I also thought the community involvement on that game was just so awesome and fascinating. I hate that the involvement on number 2 wasn't where it would have been. And I think, quite honestly, that was such an epic month that it was hard to really build up to playing the second one and to make it as good as that playthrough was. And Sean, I agree, you did a fantastic job in hosting that one, and checkpoints were great. I love the story of the game and just had a blast playing it. It was probably my second favorite RPG of the year, behind Phantasy Star, but I did really enjoy being introduced to this series that I'd heard so much about and had such a fun time during the month. So,
yeah, I think if I had played it, it might have made it into my top 5, but I'm not sure. It's hard to say for an RPG without having actually seen much of it.
Yeah, it's a great game. I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in any RPG playing. That it's a fantastic title. So.
Yeah, it sounds like this game is really special to you, Sean. So thank you for sharing that with us. And, it's, I'm sure that game has a really special place in your heart. And, now that Suikoden 1 and 2 are on PSN, nobody has an excuse to not play those games.
Yeah. Right. If only we could have waited it out a little longer, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been so good to have that for the Suikoden 2 month when it was so expensive. It would have been nice, but...
Price hasn't really dropped, though.
No? Yeah.
No. Still holding, yeah.
That's good for the people who already paid it for it when it was high.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie. So, number 3.
Number 3 is another one that you've already mentioned, Rich. Just another step up, Super Metroid.
Okay.
This one, for me, was really cool to go back because I know the Metroid Prime trilogy really well, and I hadn't played the older ones except for a few minutes of the first game. And it was really cool to see so many things about the Metroid Prime games that came from this one. And just kind of like nostalgia for something that I know, even though I haven't played it before while I'm playing it. And just all around great. Like, it hit so many checkboxes and what makes a game good, like good music, good level design, good learning curve, and just everything about it was really well done. I don't see how I could have avoided having it in my top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. Yeah. All right. So my number 3, a game that's already been mentioned. It was actually Sean's number 4 pick. My number 3 was Eco. And I'm glad that I've finally learned how to pronounce it correctly. Again, just to me, just the experience of playing a Team Eco game, playing both Team Eco games for the first time, was, enough to make me say, I'm going out to buy a PlayStation 3 because I have to see this. I mean, it's already beautiful. I mean, I'm shocked at how beautiful these games are, even on the PS2. But to be able to play these games in high definition is something that I am really looking forward to as soon as I get my PS3. It was the first game I bought for my PS3. I've got a nice little collection going right now. So I'll be ready when it gets here for Christmas. But, again, I don't know if I can say any more about it. I think Sean put it really eloquently when, he was saying, kind of frustrating at first, the whole puzzle experience, but just something you just really grow to appreciate, and, the beauty and fascination of the game. It's really like nothing you've ever played before. And, I think that, this game and Shadow of the Colossus are going to be games that are going to be, special for me for the rest of my life, And just every time I hear something about the Last Guardian coming out, I get so excited. I'm like, damn, I'm gonna have to buy a new system. What's that?
You kind of perk up when you hear the Last Guardian mentioned.
I do.
For me too, you wait as such a tease, though. I mean, like. He gives you such vague answers.
I'm like, is this true, or is he just being that artist? Is this that that despicable side of an artist coming out in him, where he just likes to just mess with people? Is this real, or is he just pulling the old Andy Kaufman on me? So that's my number 3. So
you're glad you were there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe not that song. Maybe that's but all right.
Suddenly
Floyd,
your game dropped off the top 5.
We're getting down to the nitty gritty here. So Floyd, what's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 is a real heavy hitter.
Okay.
No pun intended. It is Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay.
This is a phenomenal game. Like that sense of exploration and sense of wonder and just...
No pun intended, sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Sense of wander.
Wander, yeah. Wander the game as wander, yeah. No, I think it's, a real good example of storytelling and gameplay and how the player can create their own story, fill in the blanks for themselves, and come up with their own motivations to do things. I mean, you're never forced to do anything, but instead you get this sort of like internal motivation coming from within you to see this game to the end. Very much a perfect game for me. I mean, it has some faults, but no, I loved everything about the game, and I am really happy to finally have played this with the community on RFG. I don't know what else I can say. I mean, I'll just probably sound like I'm, rambling all these sort of little infatuated things about this, but I mean, it's great in every way.
Yeah, it's really good.
I don't think it's any surprise that it made my list too. So, and probably a few. I don't know if it made the other guys' list, but we'll see. All right, Sean, number 2.
All right, my number 2 is another kind of coming out of my comfort zone, and this is a theme that we're all talking about, is like playing a game that you normally wouldn't have played, and that's Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, this was kind of a recent one we played, so you could defer to the podcast that we did on that. That was a really good episode, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think I mentioned, it's so far the first and only Castlevania game that I've ever played to completion. So I guess that's pretty cool. I've played a lot of Castlevania games in my day, but they're really difficult. Not everybody finishes all of them. So it was cool to roll the credits on a Castlevania game. So again, my thoughts on this game are well documented in our previous episodes. So I don't have anything to add, but that's my number 2.
Backdashes its way into number 2.
Right.
This game wouldn't. The only reason this game did not make my top 5 is because of my criteria. I think Castlevania Symphony of the Night is a fantastic game. It's my favorite in the series. Yes, I can say that. It is a better game than Simon's Quest.
Was it a replay for you?
I love Simon's Quest. It was a replay for me.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I played this game about 10 years ago before our playthrough, when we had first moved to where we live now. And again, it's the one that my wife was like, enjoyed watching me play when I was playing it the first time. And I have such great memories of Symphony of the Night. To me, it is one of the, if not the best game to introduce someone to Castlevania on. I think that if I had to recommend one Castlevania game for someone to play, I would say play Symphony of the Night. I don't think it's an overly difficult game, but it's still a very challenging and fun game to play. And the RPG elements just add something great to the series.
It was my first foray into the Castlevania series, and that was really enjoyable. I'm glad I started on that one. The only reason it didn't make my top 5 is because I felt it was too similar to Super Metroid, where I kind of wanted to go with one or the other.
Right.
And so I felt like Super Metroid was kind of the better of the two. I sort of felt like Castlevania, though it was good, it was sort of a lesser Symphony, or a lesser Super Metroid, in my opinion.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. So with that, Jamie, let's get your number 2 pick.
My number 2 is another one that's been mentioned before, Chrono Trigger. Okay. This one, the first time I've ever played this game. First time I've ever played any of the Chrono games, Chrono Cross being the other one. It was just amazing overall. I definitely think this is probably the best RPG I've played. The story was pretty good. There's a little bit of flaws, but anytime you have time travel story, it's really difficult to make it be good in any way. And to have this one not only be good, but be pretty great was really amazing. And I just loved a lot of stuff. Like the music was amazing. Definitely one of the best soundtracks I've heard in an old RPG. The gameplay was really cool. I really loved how it was integrated well with the backgrounds. Like the battles just kind of popped up and it seamlessly melded with the thing. It wasn't like a black screen fading to a different battle menu or something. And yeah, just all around really good, fun game. And One thing I forgot to mention when I was explaining my criteria for my list is these are all games I feel like I could replay. None of the other games that I really liked. Some of them, yeah, but I think most of them are ones I probably wouldn't replay. But these are all ones I could easily see replaying, like, even though Chrono Trigger took me over 30 hours.
So in your criteria, you would have replay value as a part
exactly,
of the criteria.
Yeah. I think all of these are ones that are really replayable.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know if I could say that about all my games, but that's definitely a good thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to say about an RPG, too. I mean, replayability is tough on an RPG. Just because there's such a time commitment, there's so long. Exactly. It's not like a platform you can sit down and play a few hours of and, beat it, or something like Super Metroid that, you can play, in my case, about 7-8 hours and beat it, and you do better the next time for sure. But with an RPG, it says a lot about it when you put it up this high and you're evaluating something like replayability.
Yeah, to me these are games where I don't think I'm going to jump right back into them instantly, but I could see in a few years down the line maybe playing them again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this is one I've replayed. I replayed it around when it came out, and I played it around when it came out, and then I replayed it not long ago, somewhere around a year ago. So definitely something that I liked enough, and I felt enough value to play again as an RPG. So
yeah, especially with Chrono Trigger, where there's so many choices that affect the outcomes of the story and characters that you can lose or gain, and all the stuff that's going to make each playthrough unique. It's definitely worth exploring a second time through.
Alrighty, so my number 2 pick is, I think more than anything, going to be a surprise that it's not number 1, because I completely gushed over this game and talked about just how much I loved it, and how much I loved its counterpart. But for me, Shadow of the Colossus, like Floyd, made my number 2 spot, and I guess I really can't say enough about it. But I'm sure you guys are probably surprised it didn't make my number 1. So, but
I'm trying to think what your number 1 is now.
Exactly.
Nice.
And I didn't, and quite honestly, I did not put. I wasn't trying to be tricky or anything like that. There was just one more game that I really enjoyed the most, in this year, and I had the best time playing. So, I guess we've probably said enough about Shadow of the Colossus, so we can just move on to everyone's number 1 pick. So this should be exciting. I'm looking through our lists right now, and I'm trying to guess, what everyone's number 1 pick is. I'm pretty sure I have Floyd's down, but everyone else might have me a little stumped right now.
Okay, if you think you can guess what mine is, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. If you want okay. I think maybe you. I know your thoughts on this game. I know you liked Eco more than you did Shadow of the Colossus, so that would be my guess for your number 1 pick.
And you are right.
Okay, great.
Eco, was indeed my favorite game for the year. It's such a magical experience, and we've already talked about what we think makes a perfect game on the show today, and I thought when I was making this list, I thought, like, my number 1 game has to be something that is definitely something that anybody can play and anybody would appreciate, and anybody would walk away feeling fulfilled after having played it. And Eco checks all of those boxes. I mean, you can take that game to any person of, any political subscription or any culture, and it will resonate with them in some way. I mean, it's totally accessible, just like in the way that the early Mario games are so perfect. I mean, like, there's very little learning curve, and you kind of just learn by doing and a little bit of trial and error. I think you have a lot of those simulators there with Eco. For me, it was just such a magical experience. Kind of just everything hit that moment of harmony with gameplay and visuals and music. And yeah, I mean, it was so perfect for me. I was so invested in seeing the story of Eiko and Yorda all the way through to the end. Like their bond that transcends language and transcends time and space even was something so magical and so special. Yeah. And it's something that I do want to go replay. Like as soon as I finished playing, I said I want to play this again, for various reasons. Just to re-experience it, to unlock the English subtitles for Yorda and the Queen in English, because they have their own sort of gibberish language, to finally understand what they're saying, right? To uncover more of this world that is so captivating and entrancing and magical. And yeah, this is a real special game for me. I'm really, really happy to have played it.
Cool.
I don't think I knew that the English option was an unlockable. I don't remember if we brought that up in the actual podcast about it.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
You have to beat the game and then go select that save file that has the beaten game, and you'll start back at the beginning, but you'll have English subtitles for Yorda and the Queen.
Cool. And I agree with you, Floyd. As far as like being a more universal game, I feel like Eco is more universal than Shadow of the Colossus. I know that some people who game may not enjoy, and I know I said this during the podcast. I would, if I had to choose one to say, okay, play this one first, I would say Shadow of the Colossus would be the game I would say.
Well, because it's more like video gamey game, right?
Absolutely. But at the same time, I think with something like Eco, it's more, it's a little friendlier to pass on to someone else, because there's not the violent aspect of it like you have on Shadow of the Colossus. The story is more of like a love story, so it's a little more developed than what you get in Shadow of the Colossus, where you don't know what the story is.
Right.
And so I really, I agree with that point, and I think you make a good point about the distinction between the two games. And
I think Shadow of the Colossus could have been my number one. Like I guess Eco and Shadow are like they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
But I think like with Shadow, you have sort of that clunky control system that you have to master if you want to beat the game. But with Eco, it's just you grab the controller and like off you go. You're ready to play.
All right, cool. All right, so moving on to Sean. Sean had Eco at number 4, but let's see what he's got for number 1.
My number 1 game of all time is Sin and Punishment Star Successor on the Nintendo Wii. The end.
That's it.
I wasn't even thinking that someone would pick something for this month, but
that's
awesome. That's had that much. Are you? Okay.
No, I'm totally kidding.
Hey,
I thought you might have been, but I wasn't totally sure.
No, I thought that was your pick, man.
Yeah, no, as I said in the shooter segment, as I objectively think Sin and Punishment is a 10 out of 10, but I don't think even in a top 10 of my all-time favorite games that it would be in it, just because of that's a different thing to me. But anyway, my number 1 playthrough for 2014 was Parasite Eve. And we did do a podcast on Parasite Eve and Kingdom Hearts, but that was our kind of practice prototype episode back when I had my Guitar Hero mic, and probably not a lot of people have heard that. I haven't even heard it. I didn't even know I had access to it until Rich PM'd me about it a couple weeks ago, so I haven't heard it yet, but one of these days I'm going to download and listen back to it. But Parasite Eve was a game that growing up when I was a teenager, I was really into the PS1. I was playing Metal Gear Solid and Jet Moto and Cool Borders and Twisted Metal and all those great games that were out on the PS1. But I, again, wasn't an RPG guy when I was younger. So the fact that Parasite Eve was kind of survival horror and an RPG. So I associate survival horror with games that are really hard, because I've never gotten that far into like a Resident Evil or something. And then RPGs, which I don't play. So that game was like out of my league, kind of. And I always thought it was like, out of reach or, over my head. And I never played it. And playing it for the playthrough really made me wish that I had, because that would have been an early opportunity to kind of open my mind and broaden my path at a younger age, because this is a really awesome blend of survival horror elements, resource management. It's got a really cool campy sci-fi story, and it also has those RPG elements of leveling up and HP systems and all that other kind of stuff, and weapon modifications and things that we did discuss on a podcast that probably less people will hear than our other shows, but I really love that game. And again, I've actually mentioned it quite a few times on this show, what an impact that game had on me. So that's my number one pick, Parasite Eve. Amazing.
Great choice.
Yeah, really good choice.
Yeah, that's a really good game. I feel really unfortunate that I wasn't able to see it through to the end, but I had a lot of fun playing it, and really fun game. Really like it bridged the gap between survival horror and RPG really well. So yeah, great choice, man.
Yeah,
cool.
Nice
Thanks.
I had a lot of fun with it. I think it just wasn't quite top 5 material for me, just like some of these other ones. It was really good though. Like I enjoyed it a lot. Just some issues, like a bit clunky controls and less than stellar storyline and some other things, but overall, it's a really good game.
All right. So, what is your number one, Jamie?
My number one is one that's been mentioned twice now. I think twice. Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay.
Good
to me, this was
You made the right
this is very number one to me. Like out of all these games that I played, this was one that I was trying to think about for the number one. I wanted it to be something where I felt like the story blended well with the gameplay. And I didn't want it to be just in cutscenes. I wanted it to be like an environmental kind of story. And this is that game. Like, there's no other game that does this better in my mind. You get the story through the exploration and through the environment, and the cutscenes kind of supplement that, but they aren't the main part of the story. And just hit all the check boxes for everything, and there's no real flaws that I can think of.
Yeah.
With it. To me, the controls weren't as clunky as you guys seem to have issues with them. Like they weren't perfect, but they were really good in my mind.
I didn't have a problem with the controls after I learned the controls.
Once you get the hang of them, not too bad.
I thought they were better in Shadow than they were in Eco.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, and so that's why it's higher up for me.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was really cool gameplay. Like every fight was unique, and every time you moved around the map, you had to think of something new, and they didn't hold your hand through any of it. Like you really had to use your head and think about what's going on. And for the story, you had to think outside the box to sort of figure out what might be going on here. And it was just all around really good and a lot of fun.
And it was so cool.
Yeah, exactly.
It was cool.
It just defines epic.
Yeah, absolutely. That was why it was my number 2. And again, I'm sure a lot of you are pretty surprised it did not make my number 1 pick. But if anyone cares to try to guess my number 1 pick before I announce it, I'll be happy to take.
Let's see here. What are the choices?
I don't know.
Any idea?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I kind of, I don't know. I feel like it could be maybe something like, I don't know, Donkey Kong Country? I'm really not sure.
No.
I don't know. You're not as predictable as I am, so
yeah, you can go either way.
I knew how you gushed over both games and which one you liked the most, but I actually went with Sean on this. Parasite Eve was my favorite game of the year.
Oh,
nice! Wow,
yeah.
I actually wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
cool,
yeah. I had
so we can talk more about it. Yay!
Yeah, that's why.
Hooray!
that's why I was very quiet when you didn't say anything. I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm gonna save it. I'm not gonna say this is on my list too, because obviously it would have been number 1. But yeah, Parasite Eve was that game. Having the PlayStation when I was in college, and people had always mentioned Parasite Eve, in the past. And I'm like, I don't want to play that. I'd played Resident Evil 2, and to be honest, I I don't like survival horror stuff. I'm not a big fan of it. Though I am excited to play The Last of Us. It's a different type of game, but I was never a big fan of the Resident Evil games. I'll probably catch some flack for that. But I had roommates who loved Resident Evil, played through Resident Evil 2. I watched them play, and there's something about it that I just really didn't take to like a lot of people did. And that was the reason I avoided playing Parasite Eve for so long. But the playthrough of Parasite Eve was just phenomenal. Great group of people playing it. Most of us, I think, playing it for the first time. Am I right about that?
That was my first time with the game.
Well, I don't remember. Yeah. It was earlier in the year, so it's kind of hard to remember all the details.
Well, I mean, of the four
out
of
of
us,
the four of us, it was definitely my first time, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that there was something like very special about playing that game so early on with a lot of people that had never played it, and for people just be like, wow, this is a really cool game. Now, it has its flaws. I mean, the weapon system, as we mentioned in the podcast, which a lot of people are not going to get to hear, was different. But at the same time, it's a little difficult to figure out. The instructions for doing it weren't easy. It wasn't easy to figure out how to, upgrade your weapons. There's a lot of stuff you could miss. But I don't know. There's something about it. I love the way that, like, during combat, every combat sequence was different. The room was shaped a different way. You had to move, and you had to wait for your, your attack to power up. And you had to do things in between, just not like a lot of RPGs where you just kind of stand there and just wait, for your time, and you just press a button. You had to be very interactive. And I thought the story was good too.
Actually, now that I think about it, the gameplay there with the battles was kind of similar to Chrono Trigger in the way that it took the environment to make the battle screen. Just sort of been an upgrade with the movement too, not stationary.
Yeah, you just had limited space that you could move in, and sometimes this would be problematic, and you really had to think it out and kind of learn your enemy and what their movements were. So, it's just a...
I often didn't get afraid of the enemies, more so like the environment or like the space that I had to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And
sewers.
But that opera scene at the beginning, what a way to kick off the game.
Yeah, and the rat getting morphed into the monster thing.
Oh yeah, when that happened the first time, man, it's like, oh my god.
But and I would talk about starting the game with a bang. Yeah.
I would just add, I forgot to mention when I brought up the game as my number one, is that I love to play as a female character. If given the option, I will always pick a female character over a male character. And this is something that is, it's a hot topic now in the industry and in game development. If anybody's following, it's a big deal now, like diversity in characters in gaming. But back then, I'm not saying it was a novelty to have a playable female character, but I think Aya Brea is one of the better characters from from that time as being a strong female lead. So that was another like big deal about the game for me.
Yeah. Actually, now that you mentioned that, just looking at my list, and 3 out of my top 5 games were all female protagonists. So. Like Super Metroid, Phantasy Star, and Mystery Makers are all female main characters.
We're a very progressive group here at rfgeneration.com. There's no
the
women...
leading ladies of games.
No women use our website, but we play games with female characters in them.
Well, I could say 3 out of 5 of mine also, if I included Phantasy Star, since you do. Oh yeah, your main character in Phantasy Star is a female.
The main character was a
I
female.
was going to say if you could include your party, but yes, your main character in Phantasy Star is a female. So yes.
I don't remember her name off the top of my head right now, but it was a female.
Yeah, that's very early on. So
yeah,
there you
absolutely.
Go. Well, I guess we're going to have to go play Tomb Raider now.
Yeah.
well, great list, guys. I mean, of course, only 2 of us could be correct in our number 1 picks, but other than that, I think, great. Everyone had a really cool list. Some nice little surprises in there, including someone picking a game from 2013. but yeah, I did want to kind of talk about a little bit. I know we weren't going to do honorable mentions, but I did tell everyone before the call, I was like, let's maybe talk about our least favorite. I don't want to say worst, but maybe our least favorite or most disappointing game of 2014. It could be your worst, but, just something that you just really didn't care for that, or maybe you had high expectations for that just did not, accomplish that goal of impressing you. All right, Floyd, let's start off with you.
Well, my biggest disappointment of the year was a game that I really wanted to like, and I didn't hype it up in my mind to be more than it really was, but it just didn't gel with me, and that game is Kingdom Hearts.
Okay. Oh wow, okay.
Like I guess it just wasn't made for me. I mean, there were a lot of things that I liked about it as well, but it just wasn't, as Bill would say, wasn't my jam. Just despite all the effort and trying to get into it and trying to like it, I couldn't.
Yeah, I'm mostly with you, and I when we played that game, I think that's kind of back to a time when I really cared about like finishing a game that I was hosting at any costs. I'm not sure if I would have finished it otherwise. I had a lot of mixed feelings about that game as well, so that's not my biggest disappointment, but I'm totally with you on why you have the feelings that you do about that game.
Yeah, it's not that I didn't like it, and it's not that I think it's a bad game. I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, it does suffer from some of the drawbacks that a lot of early 3D games had, or a lot of early PS2 games had. But like it's a well-made game. Story is pretty interesting, but just no, I couldn't get into it.
Now I'm curious. I think I posted somewhere on the forums that I'm actually optimistic about playing another Kingdom Hearts game in the future, because I understand that they are very much improved, even starting with Kingdom Hearts 2, and that like some of the handheld entries are particularly good. So even though I didn't love the first game, I'm kind of optimistic about maybe trying another one in the future. Do you feel the same way, or are you like done with the series?
No. I'm willing to. I'm open to it. I'm open to the experience. And like I said, it's not that I dislike these games. They're just the first one, especially, it's not my thing. Maybe with the improvements that happened in 2 and the handhelds, and you know what, we'll see what Kingdom Hearts 3 has to offer.
Right.
Maybe there were some improvements made on Kingdom Hearts 1.5. I played it on the original release, so maybe that is the worst of the two versions that we have at our disposal. But if you do want to play some more Kingdom Hearts, I'm open to that.
Right on.
Cool. I just want to say this. I know that our episodes typically come out at the beginning of the month, and I want to, as you all know, Parasite Eve and Kingdom Hearts were played at the same time, and we did our episode 0 on those two games. As we mentioned before in this podcast, that was a pilot episode. It was released to the administrators of the website just so they could get a feel for what our show was going to be like. It's actually a good episode. And
I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I agree.
And we've offered this episode up to people. We're currently going at this time for our 2014 fund drive at RF Generation, where we're asking people to donate money to the website to help fund us for another year. Of course, RF Generation is the type of website. We do not have any type of advertising. It's totally member funded. All submissions and everything on the website are done by members. And for that reason, I think it's a fantastic community.
It really is, like by the collectors, for the collectors.
Absolutely. And if you're not a member of RF Generation, come join. I mean, it's free. You can house your database for free. You meet some really awesome people on our forums. And if you haven't donated for the to fund the site, actually the donation drive is going really well right now. I'm hosting that. But if you haven't donated, please donate. If you donate, we've got a great raffle going on right now, which you're probably going to miss, unfortunately, if you're listening to this. But if you donate at least $20, we are offering up our episode 0 to anyone who donates $20. And I don't know about you guys, but I kind of feel like, since people are probably going to hear this at the beginning of the year, if anyone donates $20 during the month of January, just let us know. And I feel like, because this is going to be broadcast after the donation drive's over, if you donate $20 to the website, we'll send you a copy of episode 0 if you would like it. So just make sure you get in touch with us. We'll just kind of add that on as sort of a caveat, just for the month of January, if you'd like to listen to it, because I think it's a really good episode. It's a little raw, it's us.
It's pretty shaky, yeah.
Getting together for the first time, but I think there's some really good analysis of both games.
It's kind of fun to go back and see how nervous and inexperienced we were, and, now that we have taken off the training wheels, all right, and it's a lot better.
All right. And sorry to steal the upcoming thunder of your least favorite game, Sean, but
no, that's all right. That was a really good plug, and I think extending the donation incentive is a good idea. So that's
help
awesome.
Us start collecting for the following year.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So real quick, my biggest disappointment by far was Suikoden 2, because that, for the reasons that I love Suikoden 1 that I just went over, I really wanted Suikoden 2 to be just as great of a playthrough. It's a not much better game. It's a much improved game, a better game. But I spoke at length about this on the podcast. We just kind of rushed into it. People weren't ready. I wasn't ready. It should have been a 2-month game. We were playing, was that the month we did Chrono Trigger, the same month or something? Like, we did some kind of crazy...
It was Eco.
That was Eco.
Month.
Okay, so actually, one of the problems was that I was too busy playing Eco to play Suikoden 2.
Yeah, that's what happened.
But yeah, so, and on top of all of this, we were saying, well, this game might come to PSN. Well, no, it's not. Let's just play it, and people can drop $120 on it if they want to play it. So now we find out this week that Suikoden 2 is now out on the PlayStation Network. So, that's my biggest disappointment, is that this game, we could have given it a really good treatment, and, it's gone now, So it's sad to me. But to anybody listening, we already said, when I had Sir Psycho on the show and we did our short segment on it, go play this game. It's $10 now. You have no excuse. Go get it. If you have a PlayStation 3 or a Vita, play it. Play it now.
Yeah. So your disappointment wasn't in the game itself, but more in the actual playthrough for the month.
It's like the almost lack of community involvement.
Yeah. Right. No, absolutely. And it's not the community's fault. It was just circumstances. Exactly. Poor timing and the circumstances of it. That's why it was disappointing. I didn't play any games that I hated for the playthrough this year, so I don't really have anything to come at from that angle. So that's why I went with Suikoden 2. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Jamie.
Yeah, for me, I think I kind of agree with Sean there. There wasn't anything this year that I felt like I outright hated. That's why I have mine labeled as least favorite, because it's just not as good as the other ones, in my opinion. And I had to go with System Shock 2 for that. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to like this game, because when I first started playing it, I was like, this is pretty cool. But the more I played it, the less I got interested in it. And this ended up being the only game out of the ones I started for playthroughs that I actually just kind of gave up on. I dropped it.
You're not alone.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And
you
know what? That was my other big disappointment. But I feel that the playthrough and the podcast segment that we did, like, we salvaged something pretty good, I think. So I was.
See, I haven't listened to the podcast yet, because
what?
I wasn't sure if I was going to.
Shame.
Yeah, I know. But I was worried about spoilers, and I hadn't finished the game, so I thought maybe in case I go back to it, I don't want to spoil the ending or anything like that. Yeah, so that's my excuse. But
I think it's just like Sean and I don't think we quit because we didn't like the game. I think just the game got the better of us. I mean, it was, we went in over our heads, bit off more than we can chew.
It was really difficult.
It is a super tough game.
Yep.
But definitely when you play System Shock 2 and you have the BioShock series in mind, you can see a really nice evolution in terms of like a franchise and gameplay and storytelling, and like that I really enjoyed.
Yes, sir.
All right. So for me, my least favorite or most disappointing, I had to choose between two because there was one that I completely mailed in, and probably most people know what that is.
So what are your two contenders for your least?
No, I'm just gonna put my my most disappointing out there.
Okay.
But I won't talk about it in length, but I'll say that Beyond Oasis was the game that I mailed in. But it wasn't the game. That. Yeah, but it wasn't the game I was most disappointed in. I think the most disappointing game for me, and it's on someone's top 5 list, was Mischief Makers.
Oh, interesting.
Got some contention now.
I'm not an N64 guy. It's probably my least favorite system of all the systems, and it's just I went PlayStation at that point and just really never looked back. Though I have picked up some of the the later Nintendo systems. I just found that for me it was one of those games that everybody had like really hyped up, and they said it's going to be a lot of fun, but I could not get the controls with it. I could not get the controls, all the bouncy. I'd said that at one point. It's such a bouncy game. That's how I described it at one point. It's so bouncy. I could not get into that. The sprite work was cool. It was a pretty game, but I could never get the controls right after just trying so many times and really trying and making a huge effort at the beginning of the year to do that. And to me, that was just really disappointing play for me.
Well,
like I said, my top 5 there, it was pretty clunky controls, and that's the only reason it is on the lower end of my top 5.
Yeah.
But I thought it was quirky. It was kind of fun and something different. But it is very niche, and it's not for everyone.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying it was a bad game at all. I'm just saying it was probably the one that was hyped up the most for me. And
there was a lot of hype.
and it was the most disappointing. I felt like I'd mentioned Beyond Oasis. I just kind of ran into that as being like a Zelda-like game, so there was a little hype behind that. But overall, once I playing it, I wasn't like overly disappointed in it, though I couldn't beat it because the hype wasn't as extreme.
Yeah, besides the Zelda comparison, there wasn't really anyone who had heard of that game. Really, it seemed to be a bit of out of left field kind of thing.
And let me just say, that was the worst comparison ever. That is not like a Zelda game. Gosh. All right, I'm done.
Got it out of your system.
It's probably worth pointing out that we do give every game that we play a real honest effort. Absolutely. And sometimes we just come across games that don't click with us. I mean, and everybody goes through that. Every gamer will come into a certain game with high hopes and wanting to enjoy the experience, but sometimes not every game is made for every person.
And that's the beauty of this playthrough and our playthroughs. We know, even the games that we pick, we know that they're not going to be games that are going to be stellar or games that we're just going to gush over or love for the rest of our lives. It's going to happen sometimes that we're going to pick a title that we're not as excited about, and that's what that's what makes us all special. That makes us all great and like what we like, right? I mean,
we kind of surprise ourselves every month. right?
Yeah.
It can go either way. Can love it or we can hate it.
Yeah, and that's
That's what's really good about the community too. Whereas, like in the case of System Shock 2, there's games that like I can't even finish. Like, oh crap, I picked a game to host that I can't even get through. But the people in the community did it, and they carried the conversation, and we even let them carry the podcast for us. So it's it's really cool and gratifying that it is truly a community playthrough in every sense of the word. So thanks to everybody for that.
For sure, yeah.
Big thanks to everyone for joining us.
And everyone is so supportive too. I mean, whenever somebody's stuck, it's always really nice to see people chipping in with tips and advice and just words of encouragement to keep pushing through.
Yep.
Yeah.
And before we cut off here, I don't want to drag it out too much longer. I know we said we weren't going to do runners-up, but is it okay if I mention a couple?
Sure. Go right ahead.
We've kind of kept the overall length of this segment down, actually quite a lot lower than I was expecting. I could have seen us going like 2 hours or something. But I really want to mention The Last of Us and Dear Esther, both as major honorable mentions for me.
Okay.
I think Floyd would probably agree on The Last of Us. I'm not sure about Dear Esther. But both of them had really great stories, and I felt like they had a lot to offer. It's just as a whole package, they didn't really follow through. Like Dear Esther was a great story, but no gameplay, and so it barely counts as a game. And then The Last of Us, it had okay gameplay, but it just didn't really meld well with the story. Like it was kind of, you're in a movie and then suddenly you're in a game and it's back and forth, and it didn't feel like it really meshed well, at least in my opinion. And so that's why I had them as runner-ups. But yeah, and both of them were ones that I ran through really quickly when I first played them, and I was so excited about them. But
yeah, well, all of those 4 PC indies were really great games. Probably not great enough to make it into a top 5 list. I mean, they're all really good for their own reasons. It's also probably because a lot of us liked Eco as well. It's probably worth discussing Lost in Shadow, which is just sort of like the failed attempt at recreating Eco almost. It's just like Eco that happens in the background. Once again, not a game that's bad, but just
it's great.
It's a really well-made game. Just once again, not for everybody.
You know what, Floyd, I wanted to ask you, just real quick while we're talking about games that really didn't set the world on fire in the forums, would you recommend that people play Muramasa? Because I've always had that on my backlog to play, and I have it on both Wii and Vita, so I didn't participate in that playthrough. Should I play it, or yes or no, play it?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say...
I was just curious your thoughts on that, because there was no feedback and no action on that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was a really dead month.
Yeah, that was a really dead month. And if you do beat Muramasa, you're not going to remember it forever and ever. But I think while you're playing it, you're going to have a lot of fun. And it's by the developers of Odin Sphere, so you're getting something good.
Right.
It incorporates a little bit of Metroidvania in there, and there's a lot of backtracking. Visually, the game is stunning. I mean, you could take a screenshot and hang that up on your wall as a piece of art. A lot of quirky dialogue, and it's also really Japanese, so you'll appreciate that.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, we will.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Don't go in with super high expectations, but just the story is pretty forgettable. The gameplay is just button mashing, but it's you can, if you want to play for 20 minutes, half an hour, you can do that and just drop out for a little while and come back to it a week later, a month later, whatever. It's worth picking up for sure.
Cool. I'll probably check it out, man. Thank you.
It was one of those games that took me a while to track down, and when we decided to do a playthrough, I was so engrossed in trying to finish Beyond Oasis that which I wasn't able to do, that I was not able to play Muramasa, and it's one of the games that I really wanted to play, but I was not able to, and I definitely hope that we're looking at some point and maybe doing Odin Spear.
Oh, I would love that
at some point. So I would love to do that at some point. And
I think I would just recommend the Vita version, just because you can stop the game at any time. Because sometimes the game won't hold your attention from save point to save point, and if you just want to stop somewhere in the middle, I know that's what's so beautiful about the Vita.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, if no one has anything else, again, I just want to thank our both our listeners and our participants for such a wonderful 2014. I think we're really excited about 2015 and what's coming up to play. We've got some really cool games coming up in January, which we'll already have announced. We'll be playing. On the retro side, we'll be playing Kid Icarus on the Nintendo. I will be hosting that. And on the modern side, we'll be playing 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, released on the PS3 and Xbox 360. And Sean will be hosting that game for us.
Yeah, I already started playing it. It's really good. If you can, grab a buddy and get him or her to get a copy of the game, because it's kind of designed for co-op, and unfortunately not couch co-op, so find somebody to play with online, but it's a really, really good game.
Yeah,
it's so weird because I always see games like that based on celebrities and stuff, and you never expect those to be good games. Like, you look at that on the shelf, you wouldn't think that's going to be an amazing game.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those odd ones that just kind of, everybody assumed it was crap, but then it kind of popped up as like a cult classic from enough people just saying like, wow, this game is really good, actually. Check it out. So
yeah, it's cool when developers don't like mail it in.
Right.
They're just like, hey, let's, even though this is, honestly, 50 Cent, that he's not he's not popular anymore. But at the same time, the fact that they did mail it in and they still built a serious game around him, and I'm sure there's some moments that are going to be tongue in cheek, they're going to be funny, but it says a lot about video game people and people still wanting to do a fantastic job, in their work. So that's going to be really cool. And if you're just listening to this, you'll be getting this podcast at the beginning of the month, so you're still plenty of time to jump in at any time with our playthroughs. You don't have to start on the first day. Yeah. But I'll say that there's one thing that we're not looking for in 2015, and that is that we're losing one of our co-hosts. And
I was going to bring that up.
And we're losing one of our modern co-hosts. You guys know him on the website as Tech Wizard, but Jamie, who is one of our editors, and he's been editing the show since the inception, and it's been getting a lot of help from Floyd, but kind of handing the full reins over this time. I'm sorry, Jamie was on the retro side with me. What did I say?
Yeah. I was going to correct you. I just was waiting for you to finish.
We switch so much sometimes.
Yeah.
But
I had a couple
really
appreciate
Jamie, and we really appreciate all your hard work and everything you've done for the show.
It's been really
we're
fun.
going to miss having you with the playthroughs as my partner, and going to miss having you on the retro podcast with me as well. And I know you got some things in your future that you're wanting to take care of. For those of you who don't know, Jamie is a pilot and flies small planes for a hobby, and is wanting to do a little more into that, and some other things going on in his life. So wish you the best of luck, man. And thank you for everything you contributed to the show, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully, really hope that we can have you back on the show during sometimes. I know you'll be doing maybe some playthroughs with us, and would really love to have you on in the future again.
Yeah, definitely try to step back in every once in a while and dip my toes back into what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that wraps up our December episode. Just want to thank everyone again for listening, for playing. Join us in 2015. Should be a great time with some great games. Thanks, guys.